Generally, you said feminism is
here's what actually happened.
The foundation of all knowledge.
I'm really mad that
what difference does it make, right? What
Stop.
the deregulation of the industry is obviously going to cause more of that industry.
And to lubricate the trust connection between people until they have enough.
Yet we could still look at biological reality in determining who's a female, even if there are.
Why don't you denounce feminism the same way you're denouncing capitalism? If you don't...
For something to be objective, it needs to be verifiable. And you can't verify...
If I make a claim as a political pundit, it is true that I definitely could be wrong.
Yeah,
you're promoting, right?
Ideology is the main thing of politics, right? This is my ideology.
So 2015, anyone go back and watch the footage? The first GOP debate.
Cool, Robert. Oh, they're dead? With a crowbar, you say?
It did not unmute like it's supposed to. My apologies. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I am Sarah, the Raging Tomato, bringing to you another live debate. This evening, I have with me Tyler from the Average Debate Enjoyer, Mr. Admiral Gibbs, Mr. Mojo Risen, and of course, new to our screen is Civic's Toolbox. Let's all give him a warm welcome, please, ladies and gentlemen. This evening, they will be discussing capitalism is the superior economic system when compared to socialism. Tyler, if you'd like to begin with your opening statement, please.
Absolutely. All right. Capitalism is the superior economic system to socialism. I can't believe we're still having this debate in 2026. It's not like it's not been proven 1,000 times over. What do we mean by that? There's a lot of different metrics we could use to grade. Obviously, if we're judging an economic system, we're going to judge it based on how it functions as an economy and how beneficial it is to the populace in that particular economic situation. That's my definition of where this prompt is going to be headed to. So with economically, what is the main purpose of an economic system? It's the allocation of resources. When you have a structured, state-run, centralized, planned economy, those resources are allocated in one particular way versus a free market system, they're allocated in another. We're probably going to get into the details of that, but that's generally where we're going to probably find this argument ending up, and capitalism wins that every single time, hands down. Next, we have to get into definitions. So socialism, if you don't nail this one to the wall, it turns to jello, and you can't nail it to the wall ever again. You're going to hear sometimes from, depending on the person you're debating against, that socialism is anytime government does anything. The fire department is socialism. Nordic countries taxing and doing some sort of healthcare a particular way is socialism, despite the fact that they say they're market economies. That's not what actually socialism is. If you ask other people, real socialism has never been tried because it's the absence of the state. So some people say it's anytime the state does something. Other people say it's anytime the state the state has to be completely abolished. We're going to nail it to the wall. It's a collection of qualities. It's not just one. Certain qualities carry over. Every single government that's ever existed has government functions. They're structured in different ways. Some of them are hierarchical. Some of them are owned by the means of production are owned by the public. So socialism is workers controlling the means of production, not owners. Central planned economy that allocates resources based on equality of outcome and an educated proletariat. These things are the essential components to having a socialist economy. You could have an economy that is fully capitalist and workers own 100% of the means of production. It's not just one of these things. It has to be at least, let's say, 3 of the 4. You can't just say, well, we have government existing here, so that's obviously socialism, because then every single form of government would have been socialism, and then every military that's ever existed would have been socialist, making war inherently a socialist feature. It just, the arguments, when you carry them to their logical principles, just expose all these hollow definitions. So we want to nail down what the definition is. Capitalism as well. Capitalism is often described as any time there's a free market, which, free markets are part of capitalism, but this also includes the agency and contract law of somebody that's willingly working. Thus, slavery cannot be capitalism. It's a different free market-based system. Gibbs, you're up.
Thank you so much, Tyler. Mr. Gibbs, to you, please.
All right, let me just pull up my intro. All right, guys. The task today is an easy one. What is that task, you may ask? Well, it is to prove capitalism is the superior economic system compared to socialism. I will lay out that capitalism outperforms socialism on empirical grounds, those being higher growth, innovation, living standards, and poverty reduction over time. This isn't ideology. It's what historical record and economic logic show to be an unquestionable fact. Now, before we go any further, I want to define a few words. First, let's start with capitalism, proto-capitalism. I apologize if these are already defined by my partner, but we're going to redefine it because I know they're not much different. Maybe expand them a little bit. Capitalism is an economic system in which private individuals or business own and control the means of production. Resources, prices, the distribution of goods are primarily determined by competition in a free market rather than by the state, with the primary goal of generating profit. Core pillars of this: private property. Individual and businesses can own tangible assets, land, machinery, and intangible assets, stocks. Profit motivation. The fundamental drive to produce goods and services to make money. Free market competition. Prices of goods and services are dictated by supply and demand. Companies compete to provide better products and services. Wage labor. Individuals typically sell their labor for wages in order to purchase goods. Limited government. Ideally, the government's role is to maintain a level playing field, enforce contracts, protect property rights rather than to direct the economy. It's important to note that capitalism functions differently depending on the region and the level of state intervention. Two examples include laissez-faire capitalism, a system with minimal to no government interference or regulation in the market, versus welfare capitalism, a free market system where the government levies taxes to provide societal safety nets. Examples of this: healthcare, unemployment benefits. All right. Proto-capitalism refers to an early transitional phase of economic activity that predates modern capitalism, originated in medieval and early forms of Europe, roughly the 11th to 18th centuries. It's marked by the beginnings of capital accumulation, wage labor, and commercial markets, while still operating within predominantly feudal structures. The period of proto-capitalism bridged the gap between rigid agrarian feudalism and the mechanized free market system that fully emerged during the Industrial Revolution. It allowed early merchants and investors to lay the groundwork for modern economy. Key characteristics of proto-capitalism: the domestic and putting out system. Instead of relying entirely on localized guild control artisans, merchants began providing raw materials to rural peasants. The peasants crafted goods like textiles in their homes, and the merchants paid them wages to sell the finished products in distant competitive markets. Capital accumulation. Merchant financiers started building wealth by continually reinvesting profits rather than just hoarding resources of land. Early financial innovations, the development of rudimentary banking, double entry bookkeeping, credit systems, early joint stock companies emerged, allowing individuals and groups to pool resources and share risk. Wage labor. Once again, this ties to capitalism. A shift began where rural peasants became landless or displaced from manors, forced them to sell the labor for wages in order to survive. Commercialization of agriculture. Land transitioned from being merely a means of subsistence to a profit-generating commodity, often paving the way for the closure of common agricultural goods, agricultural lands. I want to say I believe it's important that we include proto-capitalism in the capitalism versus socialism today, and thus have included a definition. Another definition and an explanation I think is important is that of socialism itself. That's why we can point to historical examples that are socialism, despite people attempting to use the argument that, real socialism hasn't been tried. Socialism is an economic and political philosophy advocated for the collective of public ownership of the means of production rather than private ownership. I will actually skip the rest of this for the socialism thing because my partners defined it plenty, and we've already gone through a lot of it. It's not the meat of the case. Capitalism outperforms socialism on empirical grounds: higher growth, innovation, living standards, and poverty reduction over time. This is an ideology. It's what historical record and economic logic show. Definitions matter. Capitalism here means private property, voluntary exchange, profit loss instead. Socialism means as I defined earlier. The as my partner defined, as I defined earlier with the capitalism thing. All right. The calculation problems socialism faces an insurmountable knowledge and coordination problem. Ludwig von Mises in 1920 and F.A. Hayek argued that without private ownership marketplace prices, central planners lacked the dispersed tacit information needed to allocate resources rationally. Prices of capitalism signal scarcity, consumer preferences, and opportunity costs. Profits reward efficiently, losses, cold failures, trial and error, and marketing against millions of individual decisions. Socialism replaces this with bureaucracy, which is inefficient, leading to misallocation, shortages, and waste. Real-world market socialism attempts, i.e. Yugoslavia, underpreferred more pure market system. Empirical outcomes. Growth of woke capitalist leading economies consistently generate GDP per capita economically freer countries, including have incomes including 5 to 8 times higher than repressed socialist ones. Some examples include Singapore, Switzerland, Ireland, the United States. Socialism heavy plan examples: Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, all lag dramatically. China, massive poverty reduction after Jinping's 1970-1980s market reforms, privatism, not pure socialism, actually shifted away from it towards capitalism. We can keep going. The list goes on and on, where they just get outperformed in dramatic extremes. We can talk about poverty reduction. I have numbers sitting here talking about 40% of the world population in the 80s to under 10% today. This is driven by global capitalism. It goes on and on and on. Capitalism creates wealth. Border metrics, every single one of them. Now, let's just go here through some of these other. I'm sure that no system is perfect. Capitalism channels self-interest and a mutual benefit via the invisible hand. Socialism assumes perfect altruism and knowledge from planners, which history refutes. Now, as far as why I brought up proto-capitalism and socialism definitions, I think it's important that we realize that socialism is an outright rejection of both capitalism and proto-capitalism in favor of socialism. So when I bring up historical proto-capitalist countries that were successful, it is completely fair and relevant to this debate. However, that is not the case with socialism. We can't point to this, oh, it's not real socialism, or oh, we have some idyllic version. We have to talk about what is here now in the real world. We have history to prove which method is more superior. Look at examples of most socialism. I'll even be generous because Karl Marx, the inventor of socialism, differentiates, but also oftentimes uses socialism and communism interchangeably. If all the varying forms of historical communist socialism can't outperform proto-capitalism, the precursor form of capitalism in historical examples, that is clearly inferior to capitalism itself, which, as if we laid it out, it doesn't. Therefore, it is clear and irrefutable that capitalism is the superior economic system when compared to socialism. Thank you.
Mojo, thank you so much, Gibbs. Mojo, to you, please, your opening statement. You are muted, sir. Mojo, oh, you got it.
Coming through now. All right, I'm not going to go through all of that. I'm just going to go through some simple definitions. Capitalism is a combination of one person's capital with the theft of somebody else's labor. This will be important in the future discussion. Theft of labor is going to be the foundation of what Marx talked about, or what socialists talk about. Socialism is a economic system that's based on the means of production being owned and controlled by the people as a whole, or in individual markets, if we are using a market socialist system, and they would be controlled by co-ops rather than corporations. Communism would be a form of government that's owned and controlled by the people as a whole, and Marxism is a philosophy that includes both of those in some way, shape, or form. We are going to have to talk about governmental systems. I know that Tyler had talked about government programs not being a part of this, but government programs have to be a part of this, because in a capitalist system, you are required to have unemployed people, which means that you have to have a government to take care of those unemployed people, or ensure that they're taken care of, so that you always have a work pool to draw from. And in a socialist system, there does need to be, well, both systems actually would need some form of central planning, some form of international relations. The government's going to have to be involved in the economic process with this as well. And I'll just leave it there.
All right. Thank you so much, Mojo. Civics Toolkit. My apologies.
You just call me Civics. It's fine.
To you, please.
All right. I'm going to try to keep this under 15 minutes. So the claim tonight, Mojo made a really good point that oftentimes we are confusing socialism with a government system. Socialism is an economic system, right? And today is an economic discussion. We can certainly talk about governments. We could talk about history. But the claim tonight is that capitalism is superior to socialism. And I want to challenge that by looking into not just history, but the theory itself. A lot of people talk about socialism as if it's some foreign authoritative system that has never worked. But historically, many of the things that people now take for granted were first thought up by socialists and people in the labor movement, labor radicals, if you want to call them that, or cooperatives, right? The working class movements, all throughout Latin America, all throughout North America, things that we take for granted. In the United States in the early 20th century, socialists are the ones that pushed for the 8-hour work week, public health and safety inspections, unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, legal protection for unions, progressive income taxes, child labor bans, public ownership of major infrastructures like railroads, like railroads, telephone systems, electronic power, public transit. James Weinstein documents that many of these demands were later absorbed into the New Deal and became mainstream public policy under FDR. So when people say capitalism gave us the middle class, I think they're thinking about it backwards. Capitalism gave us child labor, company towns, unsafe factories, robber barons, vertical integration, union busting, mass inequality. The labor movement are the ones that gave us public sector reforms. Democratic pressure forced capitalism to become more humane. And that's what I want to focus on today, is the fact that democracy and democratic changes is exactly what is at the heart of what socialists want. We want to democratize the economy. So if it's still true today that healthcare is something that we can achieve, I would like to talk about a successful implementation of healthcare that was universal. In Canada's universal healthcare system, it didn't come from private insurance companies voluntarily deciding that it was generous. It came from social democratic governments in Saskatchewan under Tommy Douglas, creating a public medical insurance system that was facing intense opposition from organized doctors that wanted a private option. But Saskatchewan was successful and eventually led to the Healthcare Act of Canada, right? So you can do it. It can start in the US. It could start with 1 state, 2 states, 3 states, and it becomes a regional thing that becomes a national movement. We can absolutely do this. Take public power and rural electrification, for example. In the 1930s, private utilities did not only electrify most of rural America because it wasn't profitable. The New Deal's Rural Electrification Act allowed for the federal government to make low-cost loans to farmers who formed nonprofit electric cooperatives to bring that power to rural communities. Take worker ownership, for example. The Mondragon Cooperative in Spain is a massive federal network that is not just a fantasy. It exists today. It is one of the largest, most successful cooperatives in the world. It ranks in more than $11.2 billion in sales. It has over 70,000 employees, and it has record profits. And it shows that democratic business ownership can operate at scale. So my argument isn't that every sandwich shop should be nationalized. My argument is that it's essential to life. Healthcare, utilities, education, infrastructure, housing, finance, and core banking should be nationalized so that if we don't have to worry about these basic needs, we can then focus on what we want to do. We can then focus on what we are skilled at. Mojo's going to bring this up. What is our ethos, right? Like, if our basic needs are met, then what is it that we can do as a people if we don't have to worry about how the lights are going to be kept on, because the lights are kept on publicly? Capitalism's defenders say that capitalism means freedom, but freedom from who? Freedom from a worker. Freedom for a worker does not mean, freedom for a worker means that they get to vote on what's going to happen. They get to vote for their boss. They get to vote for the direction that their company is going to go in. And a democratic socialist transition, which is what I will argue tonight, that we are trying to transition into that, we'll learn that you can have public healthcare, public utilities, co-op banks, worker buyouts, and employee ownership, and public investment banks through microcredit loans and community organizing, right? So the debate isn't whether the debate is not markets versus no markets. It's whether the economy should be ruled by a capital ruling class or democratized for human needs. History shows us that when the working class organizes together, they can build whatever the fuck they want, and capitalism offers it on its own.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Civics. All right. And to the audience, as a kind reminder, we are going to get through the debate. We will move into closing statements. We will read and respond to your kind super chats. And then, of course, we will maneuver into open panel Q&A. So if you have a question or have a comment regarding the debate, you are most welcome to hit the link when we drop it and join up backstage for open panel. And if you would like the gauntlet mode later on this evening, you have to hit the dono goal. So be sure to get that done. All right, gentlemen, I believe everybody is dual streaming. So please be sure to head on over, like, subscribe, share for them, and also send them all of your money as well. Gentlemen, I leave the floor open to you.
All right, well, I guess I'll jump in there. So we'll start with what Mojo said in his opening, capitalism, and define it as theft. Now, this goes pretty much as diametrically opposed to how capitalism is defined and how it's always worked, in that a contract law exists where both sides get to come to the table, decide on their terms, and when those terms are agreeable, then they both say, yes, I'll work for you for X amount of pay, so selling my time and labor for that. So theft would imply, which is theft is, taking something from somebody without their consent. If they are gladly giving their consent, then that cannot be theft. But this goes into a deeper point he's bringing up, which is the labor theory of value, a very large underlying theory behind the communist economy, or the Marxian economy, we'll call it. The labor theory of value just falls apart upon scrutiny. This is saying that your labor, regardless of the demand of your labor, is what jurisdicts your worth. So if the government says, we want you to go dig a bunch of holes for zero reason at all, those holes will not be productive, they will not generate any value, your labor still had value. Yet an entertainer, somebody is entertaining like Sarah, the Rose of the Panelverse, is not actually providing any real value, real tangible value with her amazing, wonderful entertainment. Sarah existing and fueling her life is showing the labor theory of value doesn't exist. Her entertainment is not actually adding anything. But since it's giving people entertainment, that to them is their perceived value. And our value is whatever we say it is. That's how somebody can go buy a $10 million painting of a can of fucking Campbell's soup.
Go ahead, Mojo. You're on mute.
Yeah, that was to you, Mojo.
I got it. I want to respond to the theft of labor thing. If food costs money in a system, and you're required to get a job to get food, and food is required for life, then you are stealing somebody else's labor. It's the same thing as putting a gun to their head. It's the exact same thing. Either they die or they work. Okay. And as long as you're in that situation, you don't have a choice but to work for somebody else and but to sign that contract.
Can you name a single nation that doesn't give you some sort of social safety net? Like we have that in the United States, where unemployment exists, or several food programs exist. If you're a single mom, you could actually make about $45,000 a year just off of government benefits in New York when you have 3 kids. So
welcome to socialism, sir.
That's not socialism. Is not when the government does
absolutely
things.
Socialism.
Socialism is not when the government that we defined it. No.
That's a band-aid.
Redistribution is a mechanism of capital.
Let's do one at a time. Tyler, do you have a definition on that? And then Civics, you can respond.
Yes. So the definition of socialism, as we said, is a coalition of things. If socialism is just when you take tax dollars and spend it on things for the people, then the British Empire was socialism. That America's been socialism since day one. We don't actually have to change anything. That every single government that's ever existed that's had a military is socialist, and militaries are socialist in nature because we take in tax dollars and use those to build these essential functions for the people.
Well, actually, I want to expand on this too.
Hold on, Gibbs. I wanted to give Civics his ability to respond, and then
I'm just saying that these are band-aid solutions to the failures of capitalism, right? Profit isn't always going to reach the parts of the economy that are failing people. So you need social programs that ensure that their labor is going to be put back into the force. Because if you're giving that woman or that single mother in that example that you gave a $40,000 a year, she's going to spend that $40,000 a year on people that own capital. It's in their best interest. That's why we put these band-aid solutions in the capitalistic system, because it's beneficial to the system and the economic system for that woman to spend money and for her not to be a drain on society.
Those band-aids, though, have existed since before capitalism was the functioning economy in the United States, and they've existed under every other system. Having a social safety net and government functions is not socialism. It's part of every single government that exists. You're taking one small factor, isolating it, and saying, anytime a government does things, it's socialism, which, again, I will give you my counter-argument. That means militaries are inherently a socialist act, and every act of war then would be defined as socialist.
Gibbs, did you want an opportunity? Okay.
Yeah, I do want an opportunity. I want to expand on this because, one, they've done this little nasty little bait and switch. I want to point this out to the audience and everybody here. First, they said socialism is an economic theory. And actually, when I presented this, I wanted to do Marxism and talk about both these as like both economic and as theories of government, right? And so they said no, and then we're going to exclude it. But then they come back around at the end here. We have Civics defining it as democratic socialism, and we have them attempting to define it as these are things that the government should be doing. As a somebody that's providing for the common good. Well, that would be, we are talking about a system then of government and not just a purely economic aspect. The reason why they're doing this and they don't want to talk about the government aspect and they want to only focus on the economic is because when we look at historical examples, the only example in the history of socialism that worked is the one example they don't want to claim, which is National Socialism. And that only worked because they had the Jews to kill and then they had the all-out war economy and they could do this. And so they don't want to claim that example. And every other socialist country in history, especially specifically of government moves away from socialism at some point because it's a failure or they fail eternally. And this is why I brought up, the theft of labor, the proto-capitalism, which was the answer thing. This is why I can bring up ancient Rome and say, hey, ancient Rome had millions and millions of slaves, but the average person living under ancient Rome was better than what came after. And this is what's crazy is that, y'all are going to sit here and point to, this is so sad, theft of labor, all this bullshit. But when we're going to sit here and point at what has happened overall, I gave specific examples of non-socialist countries that have some socialist tendency, like the Nordic countries, which use capitalism to pay for safety nets. Like, this is something y'all didn't refute. You just accepted wholesale. The idea that your government just does something, that doesn't make it socialist. That is ludicrous and just like a bad faith debate tactic. So do better.
Okay, so
cool.
Profit motive. There is no profit motive in feeding somebody. There's no profit motive in giving
Sure,
somebody.
I have cows. Why would I
let Mojo finish? Hold on, let Mojo finish.
If you're going to talk about, I'm sorry, but if you're going to talk about, God damn,
because dogs are barking.
Sorry.
It's okay.
If you're going to talk about free markets, if you're going to talk about trade, you're going to talk about free trade. These are all things that existed well before capitalism too. They existed throughout the history of mankind. This is not capitalism. So when we're talking about something that doesn't have a profit motive, it has to be socialism. It's not capitalism. And giving people food it has no profit motive to it. Utilizing a government or any kind of system that it takes to hand that food out to people, to centralize the labor, to make sure that people are actually growing food enough to feed everybody, that is not a capitalistic system. That's
just wrong. That's just wrong. First of all, one, it is an economic motive. One, it's to keep them alive. If you have everybody dead, you can't fucking keep the economy going. Two, it's a fucking defensive nature thing for the government. Hey, we can't have all our people starving to death. Or guess what? They're going to come overrun the government and throw us all down. So they provide a government that provides for them, be their safety or their common welfare. So yeah, that's just go ahead and throw that out the window. Maybe you should have defined it differently. And that's why I included proto-capitalism in my definitions, because guess what? That's what you're talking about. I included that proto-capitalism was a step on the way to capitalism, and it still works better than socialism. Even if you want to use communism as a transitionary state and not true socialism, we can still count that towards socialism because it's at least a form of it, and it's trying to get towards the true socialism, which we're seeing that it fails every time going forward. And then y'all are trying to attempt to take these hybrid models, which are capitalism in and of itself, with some like nice guardrails. Okay. Now, as for the beef, I grow beef. Why should you, after I spent the time to grow the beef, have any say about where my beef goes? Beef prices are high right now. Why shouldn't I benefit from having a product that is in demand? You're just being lazy. You didn't want to grow the beef. I have something people want. Maybe if you'd wanted to eat, you would have fucking worked harder and got the job. But instead, you want handouts off the brown sweat of other people's. You're talking about theft of labor. You're taking my labor. I see what you're saying. They go, oh yeah, I mean, I landed it. I made 2 points here. I mean, you can get, I'm almost done. You can be rude. I waited while y'all talked. And now here's my point finally, is that if you sit here and say that you're going to have theft of labor, you know what theft of labor is? Not paying me my fair wage for a product that I provided and took the time to invest in. But y'all are going to sit here and say, no, it's not fair wage because Sally needs to eat. Fuck Sally. Let her die. Maybe she should have worked harder. Maybe her family should have worked harder. And guess what? That's not my fault. It's y'all's fault. And it's only people like socialism are lazy people.
All right. There was a lot to unpack there. All right, let's start with your false claim. And I know that you're trying to pull at the audience's heartstrings here, but if you want to talk about the National Socialist movement in Nazi Germany, who were the first people that they killed? Who were the first people that they went after? No socialist would break up trade unions, make sure that there was no ownership of the means of production by the people. The first people that Hitler and the Nazis killed were the communists and the socialists. So how is that a socialist government? Stop using that fucking tired excuse. I know you thought that you had a gotcha on us, but that's just wrong. If you look up Google right now, I will bet you $100 right now, Admiral Gibbs, I will send it to you right now. What is the first fucking thing that comes up when you look up fascism and look up the Nazi movement? It's going to say a right-wing movement. What part of socialism is right-wing?
Well, okay. If you want my answer, I've already for one of my theses. Oh no, you asked me a question. I get the answer now. I wrote a thesis. For one of my. You asked me a question. I get to respond.
Everybody, stop for a second. Just stop.
You don't get to ask a question and then
hold on. Stop. Let me handle this, please. Okay, Gibbs, quick response to the question, and then back to civics to move forward from there.
Yeah, I wrote several papers and put them up for thesis right now, and several of them are talking about basically Nazism is National Socialism, is socialism. They had, instead of maybe being the state owned it, they had the party own it, which everybody had to be in the party. So it's like socialism by default. Left-wing fascism was a left-wing movement during this day and age. People argue that, oh, it's right-wing because of the race stuff, but that's a misnomer and a misdirect. And we can go through the historical examples. By the way, if you want, I can start quoting all the Nazi quotes, but Dr. Goebbels, the number like 3 most powerful man, till the day he died, advocated that it was a socialist country, and he was sitting here putting forth policy. Hitler put forth Peace Through Joy program, and that's another thing that was sitting here proved that they were socialist. I could go through actual nationalist socialist policy, and at every level it proves it's socialist. So yeah, you're just lying, or you're misinformed. But good try. You can try to point to the, it's right wing, it's racism. But we all know that we, really just by living today, that the liberals are all just as racist, and the lefty. Hey, listen, the Democrats, the party of the Klan, and the party of the neo-Nazis now. That's why they hate the Jews now. It's okay. You can just admit it. You're Nazi.
Bring up your straw man. Neither one of us have mentioned the Democratic Party. I get that that's your safety blanket, and you like to fucking put it between us versus them kind of team thing. Not a Democrat, not advocating for the Democrats. There's no need to bring them up. I'm a democratic socialist. There's a fucking difference, right? So when you were talking about your beef, and your farm or whatever, what I would be advocating for is for you, along with your workers, to own that means of production, for them to have a one worker, one vote, right? That is the entire purpose of socialism. We are trying to change an economic system into having a one worker, one vote system where they own everything and they work cooperatively and they make decisions as a company in the direction that they want to go in. Let's say they want to take on a capital expenditure, like maybe it's a factory or something along those lines, or it's a brewery, and they want to buy some new equipment. They make a vote as a people onto how they want to spend that money. They also do things like setting up safety nets so that they can deal with the market forces of whatever it is that they're in. Let's say it's beer. Let's say that there's a massive change in the global price of hops, for example, right? If they're able to spend, I don't know, if they're able to save about 13% of their profits to ensure that they have a rainy day fund for them to be able to survive, they also can make decisions as a collective to not take any salary increases that year to ensure that there's jobs. If you work in a federated cooperative like Mondragon, for example, some of their industries have been affected by market forces. And rather than laying those people off like you would in a capitalist private company, where they get that's tough shit, man. It's just layoffs. They actually put them into other industries where they get to learn how to work in that other industry to ensure that they have job security. This is the type of environment that I'm advocating for, is that we want job security. We don't want the market forces to dictate whether or not you get fired and get laid off just because it pleases the shareholders. That's exactly the environment that we're living in now. People get laid off all the time because one of the most expensive things is payroll. But when you're looking at it from a point of view where you are the people that are making the decisions in the company, those tough decisions of laying people off because of market conditions kind of go out the window when you have safety nets set in place. However, if somebody's being lazy and they're not doing their job, like you're trying to claim that we're lazy because we're socialists, then yeah, that's a reason to fire somebody because they're not pulling their weight. There are plenty of reasons to fire somebody if they're not doing their job, but because of market forces or because something has changed in the conditions of it, that's not a reason to fire somebody. That's the system that I'm advocating for. Go ahead.
Oh, Tyler, you're muted.
Tyler. You're still muted.
Push the button, Tyler.
Sorry, I had double mute on. My bad. I wanted to argue, because you're starting to jump into my point about the allocation of money. You just flat out admitted what I said in my opening about how inefficient your economic system is. So you're saying that the shareholders, who are the investors, who are the people that paid so that company can exist in the first place, making those jobs that didn't exist prior exist in the first place, when they say, oh, we're losing money, we have to lay people off, you're like, that's a bad thing. We should continue to make people bleed out and pay money for jobs to build things that the people aren't buying. You're arguing for inefficiency in the markets handed down by the government in order to prevent a well-functioning market from acting on its own. What you would be doing is essentially propping up the horse and buggy carriage and battling against cars. We saw socialists in the 1890s to the 1930s, going into factories and beating on machines because they thought those machines were going to damage their trade union and end their job prospects. We still see that today with AI. People think, oh, the AI is coming for all of our jobs. It's a fear-based movement that's anti-progress. And what we've seen is, as this capitalism invents new things because it's a driving force for innovation, we've actually created more jobs, better jobs, higher paying jobs that require less labor, and we're better off as a result.
I'm going to say that innovation is stifled by capitalism. Generally speaking, things are put on the shelf, things are bought up and put on the shelf because there's not as much of a profit motive, or there's still a profit motive in selling older things. I'll give you an example. I know the look on your face looks fucking really idiotic right now. However, Intel, when they created the Pentium processors, they stuck with Celerons, and they filled warehouses full of Pentium processors because the Celerons were selling so well at the time that they weren't going to release the Pentium. They hoarded those Pentium processors. They stopped working on new processors at the time until they got rid of all the Celerons that they had, and that people didn't want the Celerons anymore. The new software could actually utilize the Celerons, and then they moved to Pentiums after that. So this is a specific fault of capitalism itself, where they have a product that's better but won't release it to the public because they're still making too much money off of the predecessor to that.
That's just hold on.
We're still arguing. Let me. That's the whole point. Is the people that put down all the money that invested in research and development to invent this new product that didn't exist prior, is why that product now exists. Capitalism has been the #1 driving force for innovation for decades. It's almost undisputable at this point. If you look at what the Soviet Union, they came over here in the 80s and they saw how our farm fielding innovated to the point where it's like completely mechanized, and they were shocked. They said, holy fuck, look at this shit. It was a higher up member of the Soviet Union under Khrushchev. It came over and was just, we're done. The Soviet Union's fucking done. We can't compete with this. At the end of the day, if you look at where all the technology comes from the planet, it's the United States. Medical, we completely dominate in medical studies, new medicine, fucking technology. We are the world's leader in technology. Weaponry, we're the world's leader in weaponry. Every single form of innovation, the United States is #1 because of our system. And communist nations have to steal. China is stealing $1 trillion in patents from us just to try to keep up, because they can't innovate on their own. There's only 5 socialist nations, and Cuba is still in the 1960s. Look at their fucking cars. Look at their economy. They're 60 years behind because all capitalists said is, you're not allowed to trade in our markets anymore. You're not allowed to use our capitalist trade routes and capitalist markets. You socialists have to let your system stand on its own merits. And it completely collapsed.
Not sure what that has to do with processors, but thanks. Go ahead, Cefix.
I mean, do you think that's a dunk? You think
I
that's
think
a dunk?
it is a dunk. I think
it's
that
pretty bad when it is.
stifled.
Yeah, more like get posterized.
Innovation. You asked me a question. You think that's a dunk?
Sure.
Yes, it is a dunk, because innovation is absolutely stifled by profit motive. Absolutely, on a daily basis.
Yeah, what evidence though?
I can build.
I just gave you
your best. Your best evidence is they have a better model. Your best evidence is they have a better model that they're holding on to. Let me give you an example. Tanks, bro. Our T1, our Bradleys are whooping the ass like 4 generations back of light, not even a full tank, are beating the ass of the top tier Russian shit. The Chinese fucking shit. Their top tier radar systems that they're selling to everybody. We're proving they don't even work compared to like what we got now. It's because of capitalism. You know why? When we compare it simply going, we have so much good shit that we're still selling our C tier, and we have A and B tier ready to go, and we're always advancing, because guess what? Bob at Lockheed Martin might come up with something that Sally at L3 has on the back burner and then sell it. But what you're advocating for is, hey, we're going to make everything uniform, which absolutely stifles it. And we can see this since the 1950s. Like every time that they've had one advantage by going all in on something like the space race, the minute we open it up to privatization, we win. We win every single time, and there's no debate. It's just you have no evidence, and you just want to say it's socialism because we can't actually argue about the economic system. All right, let's hear it.
I have evidence, and here's a couple funny things that whole example that you just brought up about Lockheed Martin, and that's all publicly funded. All of it's publicly funded. That's the state. That's the people's money going into that innovation, and that's the point that Mojo is trying to make. Right. And if you want to talk about where socialist countries haven't been able to be successful in innovation, take a look at Cuba. You want to talk about their cars or whatever, but what you failed to mention was their healthcare system and their engineering. Right. They've been able to come up with a vaccine for cancer, for lung cancer. They've been able to their health metrics, for example, they're able to have almost 100% skilled birth attendance, meaning they have some of the lowest birth rates. What is it called? What's the word here? I'm trying to help me out here.
Labor?
Infant child
mortality.
Mortality. There you go. Thank you. Right. But capitalists will often try to commercialize innovation, but it's the public sector, like I just said, that brings up the scientific foundation, the internet, right? What happens is that we use public funds to come up with some research and development onto something, and then capitalists come around and put a fucking fence around it. They've done that with the internet. They've done that with electricity. The whole point is that publicly funded goods go into innovation, go into research, ensure that it's being delivered to people, and then a fucking private capitalist comes in, puts a fence around it, and then gives you a subscription model towards it. When in reality, those were our tax dollars that went into it. We should be the ones benefited from it equally, right? This myth, this understanding that publicly funded research initiatives are somehow not as innovative as the private sector is just wrong. Every single piece of innovation, because you have yet to give me a piece of innovation that completely came from the private sector. They are dependent on public funds. If Lockheed Martin was able to do it, then why do they need the government to fund them?
It doesn't matter. Public funding
How
is
does
part
that
of
not
capitalism.
matter?
I've already
How
explained
does that
this.
not matter?
I will explain it for you the
Hold
fourth
on.
time now.
Let him go. Go ahead,
If you
Tyler.
stop spurting out because you're taking a fat L in this debate that you are woefully unprepared for.
I'm gonna roll.
The reason why you're getting
Hold on.
fucking
Go
rolled, bro.
ahead, Tyler. Get to it.
The reason why, as we've explained earlier, is generally because I lost your question because I was dunking on you. Ask your question one more time.
No, he basically,
Why do you think that? Do you want me to clarify my question?
Yeah, one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Why does the private sector depend on public funds for innovation?
They don't. The private sector gives up about 90 to 95% of funding for things. Public sector usually throws into it because it's what the people want to do. But even then, it wouldn't qualify at all. That's a feature of capitalism. That's a feature of governments. That's not socialism. You're arguing, why do capitalists do things with capitalism that isn't pure laissez-faire? You're arguing this like extreme laissez-faire libertarian definition of capitalism that has never existed in human history. What we have is the U.S. system. The first thing the founders did after they founded Congress and swore in was pass a tariff. What a tariff does is a tax in order to manipulate the markets to help U.S. workers, to help U.S. industries, manufacturing build up. So from day one, they were socialists. We've always been a socialist nation in the United States and there's nothing to change. Or are we a capitalist nation and it's bad? Like, make up your fucking mind, because just government doing things and giving a small percent of funding, private funding. Like, look at our health. You brought up Cuba's healthcare system and this fucking lung vaccine that I've been hearing about. Cuba's not even top 30 in the world for cancer survival rates. The United States is number one. 18 of the top 20 deadliest cancers, survival rate is best in the United States. Heart disease, 30 days survival rates from heart attacks, and several other diseases. It's the United States, Canada, Australia, and Japan are the top 4 medical systems. The United States far and wide excels past all of them. We're at least number 2, arguably number 1 in the world. So the United States comes up with 70% of new medicine, 50% of new medical equipment, 50% of new medical studies, and we got 4% of the world's population. Our healthcare system blows Cuba's out of the water. And just because they have some vaccine doesn't mean shit. Their survival rates are garbage for cancer.
All right, I have a quick question for you, Tyler, or either one of you. I guess it doesn't matter at this point. But where do you draw the line? So you say government spending is not socialism. If we take 100% of all profits made in the United States of America and we give it to the government and the government spends it, is it still capitalism?
It depends on multiple things. That one factor alone, no, is not enough. Yes, that one factor alone is not enough.
Mm-hmm. And you keep
hold on. That proves the Nazis are so. Hold on. If his point is that socialism, then the Nazis are socialists.
I didn't say anything with socialism. I have to question.
Hold on. Let's just say the opposite is true. That is socialism. Well, then the Nazis are unequivocally socialist, because that's what they did. They made you become a party member, and all the profits went towards what happened with the government. So either way, you lose on that point. Good point. Thank you. Now, as for what Yeah, I mean, you got me. Yeah, you got me. All right, you got me a dub. Now, as for what, like I was saying over here, like it's just crazy that y'all are sitting here trying to say, "Oh, we want to keep it economic," and then you want to talk about social safety nets. You can't, honestly, you can't even talk about social safety nets if by the prompt we're talking about purely economic systems, because it doesn't matter what the government provides or public funds provide, because guess what? That would be outside the socialist, outside the Democrat system. And this is why it was laughable when you said, "Oh, I'm a Democratic socialist." That's not a Democrat. Guess what, buddy? The Democratic Socialists are part of the big tent under the Democrats. Bernie Sanders ran and almost won his nomination as president at being a Democratic Socialist. AOC has come out and said she's a Democratic Socialist. Mm-hmm. We have examples. That is the Dems. I hate to break it to you. So don't be trying to be dishonest when you're talking about this kind of thing. And like, lastly, it's very key here that what they keep doing, they keep trying to point these old examples. I want to point out that in both mine and Tyler's openings, we pointed to things like the Nordic countries as being welfare capitalist systems, which is where they have signals. I'm going to give you one, and this is one that nobody defines as a socialist country. Texas is, I guess, socialist then, because Texas taps oil at the tap, taxes oil at the tap, and it funds our college education system. And guess what? Nobody calls that socialist, because the profits are still going to the companies, and then education benefits, and we have enough of this resource to benefit big time. So, like, I'm just sitting here hearing this and going, hey, when you have a plethora of wonderful things happening to you, tax it, and maybe we can use some welfare on that. But that doesn't make it socialist inherently, and government doing things is not socialist, as we've proven time and time again, and you've not been able to disprove.
I just
so it would be socialism if in Texas that oil company was owned by the workers, right? And if you wanted to go into I don't know, if you nationalized it, or if the state of Texas were to own that company, sure, that would be socialist, right? And arguably that is what I'm arguing for, right? Oil and energy and utilities are the things that we're advocating for here. And the fact that you brought up Bernie Sanders or AOC or whatever, like, listen, just because you almost win something doesn't mean shit. This isn't horseshoes, right? That almost only counts in horseshoes. So again, the Democratic Party is one of two parties in the US that are capitalistic, right? There are only two parties. Just because there happen to be some democratic socialists or progressive people in the Democratic Party, by no means are they the ones in charge or calling the shots. I know that you guys would love to put them on this pedestal. Shit, I would love if the Biden that you guys have painted, or the Harris that you guys have painted in the run up to the election, that there was some communist system. So I would have fucking loved for that candidate, but that's not who they were, right? So you can boogeyman it all you want, but to bring it back to innovation, if you wanted to, right? Like GPS is a great example, right? Every Uber ride, every DoorDash delivery, every Google Maps app, all of that, airline routes, all of that was built on public sector or publicly funded research. Just because they came up with the technology and then the private sector came in and put subscription services on it or their own wrapper around it. The point is that the technology came from the public sector. This is the argument that I'm making, and that none of you have been able to fucking pick apart, because you know that I'm right. You know that publicly
it's been destroyed. You just don't know what's going on.
Cool, man. No, you've been destroyed. I have to go feed my pet unicorn. We can all live in fucking make believe if you want, right? But no, just because usually here's the one thing that I learned for a long time ago. Anybody that has to claim victory hasn't won shit.
Okay. Well, we're here in a debate.
Anyway, so I'm not done yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm not done yet. Pharmaceuticals, big pharma, they're often the ones that are claiming innovation, but that science doesn't come from scratch, right? Usually it's public institutions, public universities that have research funding that goes into pharma, right? All of these things is a symbiotic relationship. And you keep coming back to, you get to pick apart and pick and choose when you want the success of capitalism to work out. But you know that we lived in a mixed market economy. It's not pure capitalism. If it was pure capitalism, we wouldn't have any social safety net. If you want the free market to reign over everything, then why don't we let the free market reign over everything? Because we made that decision a long time ago that we have a mixed market economy. We don't live in a pure capitalistic society. If we do, give me examples right now today of pure capitalism in the U.S.
You know, I already covered this, right? My opening.
Gibbs, and I'll land my plane here. Since you're a farmer, get rid of all your subsidies, because that's not pure capitalism.
Rancher, I don't have any subsidies, but thank you. But like, yeah, I mean, you know, I covered all this in my open, and you didn't address any of it, and now you're coming back to it later, saying, "Oh, like you're upset that we've defined."
Right now.
hold on, mixed market, where the predominant thing is the free invisible hand economy with some social safety nets, is a form of capitalism unequivocally. Yeah, it might have some aspects that are similar to socialism, but that's because they're doing so well under the capitalist system that they can use their excess wealth to make lives generally better for the general public. That's totally different and profit driven, because happy people spend more money than it is, hey, from your argument that, oh, because public money has gone into this, which once again, this is a governmental problem. That is a government system. The prompt is economic system. So if you have any objection to public money going into it from the government into a private company, your objection is on the governmental level, and we can't consider that for the focus of this debate, because you and your partner chose, and I offered this to y'all as chose to only be the economic side of this. So that's on you, bud. Now, back to the economic side, you can't give me an example, because even in capitalist society, if a public company is getting funded by the government, that's up to the company, because purely from an economic standpoint, a company will do whatever is best for them and benefit the most people, which are shareholders and the people that buy it. So yeah, guess what? You're even proving my point on the economic level at every turn. And I laid this all out in my opening, which you maybe should have took some more notes on. I know I spoke fast, but all this was laid out and covered in depth. So get wrecked, son. And that's why we're calling a victory, because guess what? You're so far ahead, you don't even know how you're losing.
You just talked for like 15 minutes.
Wait. No,
you haven't talked.
Hold on.
Go ahead, Mojo.
Are taxation
Thank you,
and
Tyler.
tariffs, part of the economy? Are they economics? And who passes those? Government? I thought you said we can't talk about well, we have to talk about government if we're going to talk about taxation and tariffs. We have to actually include the government. I included this in my opening statement. That's why we still have to talk about government.
So when you didn't want to talk about the actual system of government itself, that was actually a bad debate tactic and a lie. And you do want to talk about, but you only want to pick about you want to only pick this is what you're doing though, is you only want to pick the things that benefit you while not accepting all the bad parts. Like, I don't know, millions of people dying in USSR because they picked bad economic policy with food, or China with the Great Leap Forward, them dying, or North Korea under Juche and all these people being used socialism, they put them in there under work camps or whatever, or national socialism. And you don't want to talk about these, but hey, you only want to talk about the things that benefits you. You can't have it both ways. Either all of this is included or it's not. And then so that's why I'm saying, when I'm talking about the economic versus the governmental system, if you want to include tariffs and all this other kind of things, then you have to include all the bad too, fam. And then when we include that, you lose by an even larger margin than just by the economic merits.
Okay. What bad do you have from the US?
Hold on. Before we even get there. So here's the thing. Since you're trying to put us in this trap. You have admitted that we have a mixed market economy, right? But somehow you're arguing from this capitalism is the best, but you're talking about this mixed market of capitalism. So let's get rid of that. You can't use any examples of mixed market. Give me examples of pure capitalism, since we have to pigeon ourselves into arguing from a pure socialist standpoint.
Well, no, we don't have to do that.
No, hold on.
We don't have to do that.
So then we're able to talk about the Nordic countries, even though they're a mixed market economy. Then we're talking about, because they're a little bit more socialist.
You can talk about it all you want. It just has no bearing on the
that's what I'm saying. We either go with pure capitalism, where there is no government intervention and it's not a mixed market economy, or we go with pure socialism. And we can either talk about the mixtures of both, or not, because that's the only way you can have a fair debate.
No, that's stupid. That's not.
So
hold on. Let you just finish.
I agree.
You just finished. Let me get. Yeah, it's stupid.
I'm not done yet. Let me land here.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you both directly. You guys can give me pure examples of capitalism where there was no government intervention.
This is just you setting up an arbitrary line that we're not going to fall for. We don't need to argue laissez-faire capitalism, the one specific, absolute, pure type of capitalism you want to argue against, because as soon as we leave that absolute, never been tried capitalism and go into the practical, real-life Western capitalism that we see in dozens of countries, your arguments all completely fucking fall apart. So again, I know you feel like you're winning because you haven't listened to a single counter argument, but every time you bring up socialism is when a capitalist government does something is just been refuted. Oh, it's an 80 IQ lukewarm
What
take
the
that we
fuck?
keep
I
hearing.
nailed both of you on that already.
We keep
You didn't. I also included
hold on.
my
Let me finish.
definition,
You didn't
which
nail
includes all the
anybody
things
on
he's talking
that.
about.
We've got the last word on it. And I'm waiting for a fucking response because I said if socialism is every time a government does things, that means every government that had slavery but also had taxation and government programs was socialist. Every government that was feudalist was also socialist. An economic system that has a government presiding over it while slavery is maintained by the government. Yeah, government systems do have slavery. They have laws that allow it. Yes.
North Korea literally has
So
slavery
anyways,
run by the government. What are you talking
interrupting because you're getting fucking clapped here. Actually address this argument for once directly. You're saying that socialism is when a capitalist government does things. Even if we are arguing mixed economy, this is like a 95% capitalist economy with some social programs for a small handful of things. And that's still a capitalist fucking economy at the end of the day. And that's
in addition
to handful of things.
I also included all this in my definitions,
companies,
by the way.
healthcare companies, welfare, food stamps, the military, all of our government, every single portion of our government, and every single government, all the way from the federal government all the way down to the state governments and your local governments are all socialism because these are all publicly funded.
That's what you're saying. Yes, every government
are publicly funded. Our schools
the United States is already socialism. Yes.
I'm going to tell you that 95% of our system is socialism already.
We're a socialist
Hold on,
system.
Tyler. He's answering. I can't hear him. Mojo, I didn't hear your answer.
Dodging.
I didn't hear.
No, I'm not dodging. I'm going to tell you that the vast majority of our system is already socialist.
I didn't ask that. Yes or no? Are we a socialist economy in the United States?
The vast majority of our system.
Yes or no?
We are a mixed market. We are a mixed market economy. We are a mixed market economy.
Socialism doesn't mean anything. You're just saying socialism.
No, we're a mixed market economy. We combine capitalism with socialism, as well as the Nordic countries do too. They just utilize more socialism than we do.
Are we a free market economy or are we a planned economy?
We are a planned economy.
We are not. That's factually.
We are absolutely a planned economy.
You were just
Mojo, let me ask him this. Tyler,
right
can I call you Tyler?
Yes,
Tyler.
yes.
In a free market economy, like you're claiming that we are, right? That's your claim. Okay. Can you please, because I'm an idiot, explain tariffs to me?
Yes. A tariff.
What part of tariffs is free market?
All of it. Taxation is part of a free market economy.
Are you serious?
You're arguing this
right now.
We're not libertarians.
We're arguing what 99% of people, including most economists,
crazy.
You know what the Chicago School of Economics is?
No idea. If you want to get into Chicago, we can, because I have a perfect example.
Austrian economics like it's fact. Nobody believes that. Should libertarians get 1% of the vote? We're arguing about actual capitalism, not some laissez-faire 100% extreme version. You're shadow boxing. Right?
Tariffs are not capitalism.
Tariffs are not capitalism.
Something
we're not arguing for. You're
let's
taking
find
L's here.
Okay. Cool.
I want to.
Okay. Go ahead, Gibbs. Go ahead, Gibbs.
I just want to go through some of the things I brought up in the opening here again. Is I brought up once again proto-capitalism, which includes things like slavery, which includes things like the Roman Empire, who are unequivocally that proto-capitalists. They do all these things. They also provide services. This is kind of the brain rot argument you get a lot of times when you talk to a libertarian, where government does anything in socialism. This is why when I laid out my definitions, I talked about different forms that are defined versions of capitalism by the Mays School of Business. We have Chicago economic, whatever he just mentioned, School of Economics, where they are laid out by Keynesian. They all do these different forms of economics where they lay out how, all these things are capitalist, like welfare capitalism is a form of capitalism. The Nordic model is a form of capitalism. Not everything just government doing something is socialism. That is a lie. And that's why when libertarians come on the stage, they get wrecked every time. Now, it's interesting to see a socialist try to argue this, because what Tyler's trying to reiterate is if we're already socialist in all the ways he's describing, then what is the point of this whole debate? Which clearly no one defines the United States as a socialist country. That's just a misdirect and bad faith, because everybody, this is why I brought up Texas doing the same thing as the Nordic countries. No one defines Texas as a socialist state, right? We have way less protections than all these. Now, we have some protections, but that's because we're so rich in oil that we can afford to tax a little bit and give on down to education at the public university level. How wonderful. Now, what y'all are sitting here saying is that somehow would make us socialist. But it's like crazy because it's not based in history. Yeah, I can. Don't you worry, brother. And y'all can sit here and tell me all throughout history this has happened. But when I look at the facts, I can look at the Assyrians. They had a whole government predisposed on the acquisition of slaves. And guess what? They were a proto-capitalist society. No, yeah. So like I said, they are, and that's a good example. I said that in a meme voice, but they literally had an economy based on slavery to a large extent, just like the antebellum South. Everybody would argue the antebellum South is a proto-capitalist society, and these societies provide, even with the horrors of slavery, better results for the largest groups of people. And we can even talk about child labor. We have a friend of this channel, I'm sure he's been on here before, Non-Fawn. Non-Fawn talks about regularly how child labor is actually a good thing for the economic model. Why? Because it's a transitory state in the way communism is the transitionary state.
Okay, then you attack to them. Don't tell us about that person.
Can you land, please? So
my point is capitalism beats you on every metric. Governmentally, even if we leave it all out, but if we include things like tariffs and stuff, economically we just dominate. And when you talk about why they do things like tariffs, it's to sit here and make industry better at home. Because the government, the whole point of having the government is to make the lives of the people there better and protect them.
Okay, I just want to make one comment real quick, and then Civics, I want to hand it to you, because the comment is simply that wage labor is slavery.
Okay, cool.
Go ahead, Civics.
I find it really funny that we have a free market, but we also have tariffs. That is the antithetical to a free market. But if you want to bring up the Chicago School, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I would love to talk about Salvador Allende and what happened in Chile. Right, it started with a democratically elected president. Right, he was democratically elected. One of the biggest things that Allende did was nationalize certain industries and making sure that those profits were being reinvested into the country. Right, ensuring that he was moving his people out of poverty. Right, one of the most important facts, because if you want to try to bring up authoritarianism, Chile's Congress unanimously approved the copper nationalization. Right, that's one of their biggest industries, was copper at the time. Right, so that was their Congress, not Allende himself, that voted in favor of nationalization. Right, there are other things that the Allende government was trying to do in terms of bolstering their trade unions, ensuring that there was public ownership. He was in power for 3 years. Right. So not only he didn't abolish democracy, so again, not an authoritarian. He tried to use democracy to democratize the economy. The nationalization was passed through Congress. The half-liter milk program that shows that they wanted to ensure that there was nutrients going to school children and to people that were hungry throughout the country was a blueprint for a lot of other schools that were able, or blueprint for a lot of other programs around the world to try to ensure that there's free lunch for students and for malnourished kids around the world, right? And the biggest issue with the Allende government was that they were overthrown by Pinochet because they wanted to introduce Milton Friedman's Chicago School of Economics, right? And through a CIA back coup, Pinochet, under the guise of implementing a Chicago-style school of economics, was the downfall of Chile. Do you understand what happened there? Just so we're on the same page, just a quick question. You know what the Pinochet government was, and how they took over, and what the changes that they were to overturn what Allende did in '73, right?
Is that actually a question this time?
Yeah, I mean, if your question is that,
it's just a simple question.
Yeah, the answer is yeah. But even if you point to one bad example, I still have thousands of examples that are so. Like your one outlier example proves the rule. Thank you once again. Go ahead.
And it's not even a well described one. I'll get to that when he's done.
Well, no, I'm asking, like, you know about like the Chicago School was the economic theory behind
Pinochet's point, so I can fill everybody in with most of the details you left out.
Okay, so the Chicago School essentially mistook markets for freedom, right? That's one of their biggest flaws that happened in Chile, right? The prices were controlled by the state, and they were the ones that were able to devalue their currency, and they were treating capitalism more as a competitive. They were treating capitalism more competitive than it actually was, right? So the Chicago economists would preach competition, but their policies essentially ended up in monopolies, right? That's one of the biggest things that happened in Chile, right? Under Pinochet, right? They were creating monopolies when in theory you shouldn't have any monopolies, especially not formed from the state, right? The Chicago School also described the economy as if everyone had the perfect information, then there would be imperfect decisions that were being made because it's all market driven and all based off the economy. But the problem was that they didn't take into consideration the externalities, which most economies often forget, that were severe social depression that was happening in the country. Poverty went up, not down, under the Pinochet government, while it was going up under the Allende government. He created programs to ensure that they were addressing poverty at its root and giving people agency to be able to have their own ownership over their means of production, as opposed to it being this market-driven monopolies that were created there, right? Like that's part of the failures under the Pinochet government, not to mention the repressive fucking authoritative regime that he had and all the people that went missing and killed, et cetera. Go ahead, man.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, your examples that you give are extremely poorly context, because this was a government that was in place for 2 years, and you're using that as your grand example of how a government's great for socialism is something we don't even get to see most of the policies get implemented, let alone data sets of how they function the economy for decades afterwards, like we have with dozens and dozens of capitalist nations. At the end of the day, you're talking about a country, again, that was in place for 2 years. Earlier, you use an example of Canadian healthcare. Canada's a capitalist nation, and the majority of Canadians are on private insurance healthcare. So, like, you keep using these examples. Yes, they are. You keep using these examples of capitalism being bad. Capitalism bad. But then you're using capitalism as your example of a good thing. Like, you guys are flat out saying the United States is a planned socialist economy, but then also arguing at the same time that the policy of the United States are evil. So you're basically arguing that socialism is bad. Like, it's so back-ass what no economist would consider the United States a socialist planned economy. That is internet-brained retardism. There's no other way to explain it but a bad definition of socialism.
I'm too used to TikTok. I didn't realize we could say that word. But you're trying to say that Canadians have private insurance?
Yes, they have a two-tiered system.
Everywhere.
Well, I want to
hold on. Everywhere.
I didn't say
right?
everywhere. I didn't say everywhere.
In one province, they have a two-tiered system.
Well, while you do that, you brought up the subsidies thing earlier.
And you want to talk about hold on. We'll just land here really quick because he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Canada has a national healthcare system. The provinces are in charge.
As I said, 70% of Canadians have private insurance as of December 13, 2022. That was my claim. That was my claim. Is that the majority of the country,
the majority
it doesn't matter
of
what it covers.
Canada.
That was my claim, and my claim was correct. You said I didn't know what I was talking about, and when I proved my claim, you then jumped into it and started arguing something different.
Look
That's
up what
you
it
taking
covers.
an L. That's
Tyler,
another
look up
L
what it
for
covers.
you.
Tyler, I live in Canada. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
75% of people have private insurance.
What does that cover? Private insurance. Private insurance in Canada.
That's
Can
not
you stop? Who lives here? Hey, who lives here? Who lives here, Tyler? Tyler, who lives here?
Well, you got.
Is this? Hold on for just a second. How vital is it? How vital is it that this moment pertains to the topic? Is it dire? Is it dire to the argument? If
I'm just
not,
pointing out a misinformation here.
Okay.
Private insurance in Canada. I'll land in 10 seconds. Private insurance in Canada covers things like your dental, vision, things that aren't covered by the public option. That is what private insurance covers. Your hospital bills, your general practitioners, those are all publicly funded. That is the difference.
Yeah, I mean, even then, arguably, it's still not that great because you can talk about 30 months to find a specialist. We can look at the UK's public healthcare system; it's way worse than our private system. But I want to talk about farming here and ranching. I'm a rancher; I don't get the subsidies that some of these other people have. However, when you want to talk about planned economies doing really badly, and let's just, if we wanted to grant like examples within our own government where we tried something socialist and planned by giving subsidies to farmers, I would actually argue this is the biggest reason that we have a beef crisis right now is self-inflicted gunshot wounds. And you want to know why? Is because the corn subsidies. When they switched the corn, it became better to farm corn, and we had corn-fed beef. And when corn ended up market crashed because of viruses and because of like the market share going overseas, all sorts of other reasons, but the corn market crashed, that drove all these ranchers out of business that were corn-fed, and that left people like me that are grass-fed and survive. So I can point to direct results. And every time we have planned economies get involved or planned attempts by the government government to plan an economy and get involved in specifically agriculture, which was what Mojo was talking about at the beginning about feeding the people. This is maybe one of the most egregious examples of why socialism doesn't work at a governmental and economic level. We can look at the USSR. We can look at China. We can look at North Korea. All of these countries, which are the closest examples we have to pure socialism, have egregious failures at feeding their people. So the biggest need that Mojo advocated for in the beginning, it is true. It is true, though.
You just keep saying the same thing, though. You're saying the same thing. You're not saying anything different than you've ever said before.
That's the affirmative job.
It's good. Affirmative is to reiterate my case, and that's why I've laid out my debate, and I included.
Yeah, I've ignored it for a reason.
You have to object these. Well, I know it. You've let it slide.
That's a ridiculous point.
Hold on. This is a debate. In debate, you're not supposed to ignore things. You have to address the claims.
No, I can ignore ridiculous.
Listen, I know you're used to. I know you're used to TikToking and whatever, but this is called getting your ass whipped. You have to address it. Now, when I'm looking at these things, I can look at every example where they do bad, and it's your specific agriculture in the planned economies. And I'm almost done. And you can address it. I apologize for taking so long, but I got interrupted. Here's the thing. Is when we talk about this, I can point to even within our own system, all these times, the Dust Bowl is directly related to poor management of the agriculture industry by the government, directly related. And we can look at this over and over and over and over again. And so the one claim you made at the beginning was feeding the people being a priority is the one thing socialist governments fail the most egregiously at. So it's just, once again, capitalism wins every mention. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so to address you directly, the funny thing is that if you want to blame poor planning on the result of the Dust Bowl, the funny thing is that the solution to the Dust Bowl was also more planning by the government and the New Deal. But either way, none of us have made the argument that we want, at least I don't want a planned centralized economy. I want utilities to be paid for. Your electricity, your energy, your schooling, your healthcare, all of these things shouldn't be dealt with by market forces to begin with. Arguably, from a socialist point of view, none of those should have to deal with market forces. You want to get into private enterprise, you want to start getting into workers owning in democratizing the workplace, by all means, those have market forces. I'm advocating for market socialism, which is what we were the point I was trying to make. And we want to talk about debate tactics. You didn't address any of the things that I addressed in my opening line, right? I was talking not about a strong centralized government. I don't want an authoritative government, right? I do want regional control. I think that the way that the U.S. is set up is perfect, right? 50 independent nations governed by one federated system. I would want the same thing, right? Because regional control over something is great. Working in a federated system of co-ops is also great. It allows you to deal with the market forces of changes in the price of something. But when we're talking about agriculture, something along those lines, like if you want to compete with the rest of the world, sure. But if your goal is just to feed your people, why do the market forces matter? We have so many different areas of the U.S. that can rotate crops if they needed to, right? We could ensure that our diet matches one that is based on the time of the year, right? You can have squash in the summer, squash in the fall and corn in the fall and things like that. And as spring comes, you rotate things based off of what can grow in your region, right? That's what's important. Because if you're not hungry, you can go and be creative and do things and work with your fellow man, your fellow worker into whatever fucking industry you want. And if it's great, then you can compete at a global level. And if you don't want to compete at a global level, then you don't have to. The world is your fucking oyster. That is the system that I'm advocating for. Go ahead.
Well, I love that we, stated that a planned economy is the central core function of something actually being socialist. And when I said that you could have 100% worker owning of the means of production with 100% co-ops and still be a capitalist nation, nobody disputed it. So basically, you just said, I don't want the core thing that socialism is because it's bad for the economy. I would rather just have this type of capitalism. So you essentially just conceded the debate in that last statement. I don't think you realized it because actually listening to the full context of what you said, where you're just kind of pushing out mindless dribble as it comes to your brain. That's literally what you just admitted to.
If you're planning at a local level and you're planning for local communities, I would suggest that we do that today. We do that through zoning laws. We do that through the way we set up cities, the way we develop watering systems, the way we run water through cities, the way we run our electrical grids. This is all central planning. This is all a federal government all the way down to a local government that actually makes these decisions. This is all planned out ahead of time. You don't get to go in and build a whole new community without actually having the plans for the streets, the roads, the businesses, where the businesses are going to be zoned, where the schools are going to be put, and where your electric lines are going to go, and where your internet lines are going to go. These are all things that are planned ahead of time. This is a system we live in today.
So wait. That's what you define a central planned economy as?
Is that not centrally planned?
No,
not centrally planned?
That's not what
bullshit. It's centrally planned on a local economy.
Hold on. Wait, just let you go.
Scale.
Hold on. We just let you embarrass yourself.
You asked me a question.
Hold on.
You asked me a question.
It was
yes, you did. You asked me, is that your idea of what central planning is?
Stop, everyone. Mojo, would you like to answer the question? I gave Gibbs the opportunity before. Mojo, would you like to answer the question? And then back to you, Tyler.
That is absolutely my idea of centralized planning, because we have centralized planning within local communities, and the federal government does it on a federal level as well. We have federal lands that we have to deal with. We have eminent domain that we have to deal with. We have federal highways that we have to deal with. So all the way from the local community, all the way up to the federal government, we plan everything.
That's a structure of how a city is built. That is not the economy. A centrally planned economy is when the government controls production, distribution, and pricing. You are arguing central planning as a general concept. We're talking about a centrally planned economy. This is fucking embarrassing, dude. I don't even have another better counter argument than that. Besides, you are using the wrong definition.
I just want to go into this because this is why we defined, both me and Tyler defined definitions and went into exactly what that meant with the socialism, because I knew that this was going to happen. I didn't know we were going to get the libertarian take where everything is socialism from people that are arguing for socialism, because that's ridiculous. Everything can't be libertarianism. Everything can't be socialism. Everything can't be capitalism. There have to be differentiated things. But also, I'll just use the Merriam-Webster one. So this is one that I think everybody can agree to as the most basic and easy definition. Any of the various egalitarian economic and political theories or movements advocating collective or governmental ownership and administration of the means of production and distribution of goods. Now, if that's Merriam-Webster's, and now Tyler and I have both defined it different, none of those match up with Mojo's saying. So we have three definitions here that don't match up with Mojo's idea that anything that's
my definition that I'm arguing
and it's a bad definition that's not backed up by political theorists, including Marx himself, who invented socialism. Yeah, well, hold on. You're arguing what, bro? That doesn't even make sense. If you're going to sit here and say I'm socialist and I want socialism, and then ignore the inventors, okay, maybe the inventor of socialism doesn't own that definition anymore, but he at least put out forth the definition that doesn't match yours. We have Merriam-Webster, which is the definitive authority on words, pretty much worldwide. Maybe we could use Black's Law. I have that next to me if you want me to use that. But either way, both of those are going to tell me that the same thing. It's going to be a governmental ownership of property. When you're sitting here talking about zoning laws, and Tyler and I have given other definitions based off ideas from political theory schools and economic schools like May's Business, Chicago Economic Theory, Kinsey, and all these different people. And when all these match up, and your definition is, well, anything government does is socialism. That's not socialism. City planning isn't socialism. This is just either misunderstanding what socialism is, or just willful ignorance to the point that it's malicious. So I at least think civics is trying to engage in good faith, but you're sitting here being very bad faith with this and trying to advocate that everything is socialism from the point that government does one thing, and we know that's not true. It's just not a good point.
Is Marxist-Leninism still Marxist?
Sure.
Okay.
It's a form of.
All right,
that's my point.
And Gibbs, since you brought
that's
it
my
up,
point. So this is Mojo. This is Mojo Marxism.
Yeah, and Gibbs, since you brought it up, Marx isn't the father of socialism.
Okay, he's one of the founding fathers.
Is he?
Of socialism.
I was him. Some French guy in the 1700s.
I would argue him. I would argue Goebbels. There's precursors to them. Both these are major influences.
Marx refined it. Marx refined it for a more modern age, and Sorel as well.
What do you think I'm doing?
Is it a theory that keeps evolving? Is it a theory that keeps evolving? Just like capitalism, right?
Sure.
Capitalism is
but it is a theory that keeps evolving, but you can't go and say everything's socialist because government does one thing.
You want us to argue?
That's not how a definition evolves.
You want us to argue over a definition that you had in your head. We're trying to tell you our definition.
Merriam-Webster has,
for the purposes of this debate.
Has.
But somehow we're not able to have that liberty and that leeway to understand, even though we've all admitted here that these economic theories transition over time. So somehow you're able to navigate the roller coaster of things that evolve over time, but we can't. How is that fair?
Oh, well, it's fair because words mean something, right? And like words do evolve, right? Sure, but words don't completely change their meaning, right? I can't say, oh, socialism means zoning laws, because that's not what socialism means. Because when I can sit here and see how socialism, democratic socialism is a form of socialism, just like welfare capitalism is a form of capitalism. There are branches of capitalism, there are branches of socialism, but if that doesn't, none of these forms, Leninism, Maoism, Juche, none of these forms negate the original definition in its entirety, which is what Mojo is trying to do when he says government does anything is socialism. And this is, even if you go further back to before Marx, socialism countries still match up worse than proto-capitalist countries. The Roman Empire outperforms all the socialist countries. The Mongol Empire outperforms all the socialist countries.
You're trying to rewrite history. So you're rewriting history.
I define that.
You're rewriting history and saying that the Roman Empire was capitalist.
No, I said proto-capitalist.
And the Mongolian Empire was
proto-capitalist. The proto-capitalist.
Was Alexander and the Macedonians, were they capitalists as well?
They would be proto-capitalist as well. Yeah, anything barter system based is going to be proto-capitalism.
All right, everything that we described as something that was publicly funded is proto-socialism. There you go. It's proto-socialism. Going to the moon, NASA, proto-socialism.
Okay, so let me scrutinize
the 11
that
fleets we have proto-socialism. 11
do you see how dumb that argument is?
Let me scrutinize.
Hold on,
you see how easy it
going
is?
at once.
Sorry,
No,
it's not easy it is to just throw everything into this proto-socialism. You cannot, with a clear face, say that the Roman Empire was capitalist.
I absolutely can, because I laid this out in my opening. At the very end, I explained why it's absolutely fair to include proto-capitalistic countries and compare them to socialist capitalists, because we have examples of these forming into capitalism as we see today. We don't have a single example of this one true socialism ever forming, because no form of socialism ever works. So when you're sitting here saying, oh, it's proto-socialism, that doesn't work at all. And I laid this out clearly. I mean, maybe you need to go back and rewatch the VOD, but I laid that out and I avoided this trap.
Socialism is an evolution from capitalism. Socialism is born from capitalism because capitalism fails. Because capitalism is a system. Capitalism is a system that was designed to fail, and therefore the evolution becomes socialism. So if we haven't seen a true socialist system yet, it's because we haven't gotten to the point where we've actually let capitalism fail, because we use socialism to prop up capitalism to make sure it doesn't fail.
Everything's socialist, but we haven't seen socialism yet. So let me scrutinize you guys.
Just say, what was my?
We just heard you.
Yeah,
anyway, I want to ask. That's irrelevant. Let me ask you a couple of questions really quickly about. So you're saying that these policies would be socialist and in nature. If you're taking in tax money and building a welfare state, would that be socialist?
If what?
You're taking in tax money and you're using that to build up a welfare state. Would that be socialist?
Sure, just like you said, 100%.
Yeah, this is a trap. This is a trap.
100% taxation is not capitalism.
Yeah, these aren't traps. I'm just trying to figure out something really. So, would you say that having a giant union of workers and the state backing that union in some ways compelling people? You know how in like non-right to work states, if you want to be a teacher, you're compelled to join the union or at least pay its dues. Would you say that's a socialist policy?
I don't know about compelling anybody to do anything.
Well, would you say let's say compelling or making somebody join a union in order to work in a certain industry? Would you say that's a socialist policy?
I would say no, because it's in a capitalist system.
Well,
it's working under capitalism. It's a wage theft.
That's
capitalism.
But that's like every example you guys have brought up with Scandinavian countries, Canada, those are all under capitalist systems, and those are your guys' examples of socialism.
They're mixed market economies. We agree with that. We just want more socialism. Yeah, we want more socialism than we have right now, and we want to eventually transfer it to an entirely socialist system.
So you're saying that nothing is socialist. So what you said earlier about the United States being a socialist nation and a planned economy is not
everything that doesn't have a profit motive is socialism.
Yeah, every single time that there has been a socialist revolution throughout history, and Tyler, you seem educated enough to know this, has always been overthrown. So every single one, from acknowledging Allende to 1954, to El Salvador to Panama, all of them have been overthrown.
I'm still asking some questions here. So what you guys were talking about earlier with labor unions and workers' rights and the 40-hour work week and all that, that was all a feature of capitalism, right? Because unions that passed those and they were working under capitalism, so those would be successes of capitalism, right?
I would argue that that's a movement towards socialism.
But it's under capitalism.
It is.
So
it is under capitalism, but a move towards socialism.
Yeah. Okay. So it's still a capitalist policy by your definition.
Yeah, we live
right?
in a capitalist system. I'm a Barbie girl living in a Barbie world.
But you just told me it was a socialist system and a planned economy like 10 minutes ago.
No, a planned economy. You asked me.
You just said we were a planned economy. You just said that.
I said we have a planned system. Yeah. I said our government is planned. We are centrally planned in this country.
I wrote it down. You said the United States is a majority socialist nation with a planned economy. Not planned system, planned economy is what you said.
All you asked me for was central planning.
Yeah, a planned economy.
Yeah.
That's what
No. Central planning is all you asked me about.
So you were using the vague definition. So you're saying constructing a city.
What's going on for what you asked me?
Constructing. I asked you about central planning in terms of the economy. The argument I've been making the entire debate.
If we were a centrally planned system, and I said yes.
Fuck! I have to explain my entire argument, my entire opening over to you in every single question for you to understand the context.
I gave you the answer to your question. I'm not sure what you're looking for.
Oh my god, you don't even know what these words
mean. Oh my god, maybe you should ask better questions.
Bro, I thought you were up here. You don't even know. I mean, what's he's not bad English. He doesn't know what the words mean.
Can we?
Well, yeah, that's really.
I'm sorry, but you don't get capitalism without roads. You don't get capitalism without schools. You don't get capitalism without electricity. You don't get any of that.
Capitalism happened without proof. Okay, this is the problem. This is what we're having.
I
knew this was going to be.
Hold on. Stop. Let's go Gibbs and then Civics because I saw them both trying to jump in on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll be 10 minutes though.
This is the issue that is happening, right? And this is like, guys, I want you all to know this is how bad a whooping's going if I'm the one doing this. If I'm sitting here and telling you words mean something and turning into Destiny and fucking Andrew fucking Wilson, where we have to talk about the meanings of words and they can't just mean anything, this is a problem. This is why I laid out several definitions up front. Proto-capitalism, which encompasses all these things. I laid out capitalism, what that encompasses. It included welfare capitalism, which is like the Nordic states, where we have all these kind of safety nets. We talked about laissez-faire. We've talked about hybrid systems. These are all capitalistic arguments. This is why whenever Tyler's sitting here saying, oh, all these things happen under capitalism, it can't be capitalist and socialist. This definition of everything that the government doing anything socialist is basically been debunked by every political person ever. This is why we have definitions. You can't just evolve to a word doesn't mean anything anymore. Like if you say everything not the capitalism is socialism, that's ludicrous. That's not true. Like there's a reason why there's other words that describe things like populism or like republicanism or like you can talk about corporatism. These are all different forms of things. Like these words mean something. And then we can look at the comparison contracts between different forms of socialism. And what makes a Leninist versus a Marxist very different, right? Or versus, a Leninist versus a Maoist, or like what Juche, how they're doing. These are all still forms of socialism, and they have varying like things that are different and varying things that are similar that define them as socialist countries, right? That's why I include the National Socialist. Hold on, I'm almost done. And so when you're sitting here trying to give these vague definitions, and we've given you actual concrete ones that are agreed upon by the majority of society, I'm sorry, your case fails completely. And then you can't just go, oh, these things are coming from capitalism, because socialism is not an evolution of capitalism. Socialism is a rejection of capitalism and proto-capitalistic ideas to form a system run by the worker. That is something that is a rejection of the status quo. So for you to say it evolved from that is just dishonest. Once again, it's a rejection.
All right, cool. So if this debate was a 50-50 debate, capitalism versus socialism, but then I came in here and been like, well, it's pseudo-socialism. All of a sudden, it's not 50, it's 60 to 40. And then I start giving all these vague definitions because I get to throw all of my fucking arguments into the bucket of like, well, it's not just capitalism. We're going to throw in other fucking definitions of it just to make my argument a little bit more blanket so that I can't be direct about something and can't give concrete examples. I can pick and choose as I fucking please because I've changed the definition. That's what you're fucking doing right now, Gibbs, is that this is supposed to be a debate about socialism versus capitalism, and now you're throwing in pseudo-capitalism in there that has aspects of a mixed market economy, which is not what the point is. So again, if you're going to say that the Nordic countries are now not socialistic, because they're capitalism, then what the fuck do we have to work with? I would make the argument that no, they're more socialist than they are capitalists, and that they're in our bank, they're in our side of the fucking aisle, right? But I can't because you're pigeonholing us into something that we can't fucking defend. Now I'm going to lay down very, very clearly the definitions that for this. Capitalism isn't just markets. Markets have always existed, which is why I laughed at your stupid fucking example that the Roman Empire was capitalistic. Get the fuck out of here. Markets have always existed. Capitalism doesn't own markets. I hate to break it to you. Long after we're done with capitalism, markets will still exist. So as much as you want to own markets, you can't. Secondly, capitalism means private ownership of the means of production, which is what Mojo and I have been arguing against. Wage labor, production for profit, investment controlled by owners of capital. Workers do not democratically control the firms that they work in, which is what we are advocating for. Public goods are often turned into commodities, which we've demonstrated numerous times in this debate. Economic power becomes political power. Socialism is not simply government does stuff, right? Democratic socialism, which is what I've been arguing, means that social democratic ownership of major productive assets, worker power in the workspace, public ownership of essentials, production for use of human need, not only profit. Markets may exist, but they are subordinated by public purpose. We are using market forces for public good because there's democratically owned businesses, right? Political democracy has expanded into the economic life. We are trying to democratize our economy the way that we have democratized the way that we run our government. That is what I am advocating for, what Mojo's also advocating for. Yet somehow you're going to bring up pseudo-capitalism as if there hasn't already been predefined issues with the free market, because whether you want to admit it or not, you guys are all advocating for Keynes. And Keynes wanted to have band-aid solutions to market forces using socialism. I hate to break it to you, but that is what he fucking believed. I land there.
Keynesian economics is not socialism, and the conflation that you think a capitalist Keynesian stance is socialism is showing us the problems. You don't even know the stance. You did. You said Keynes is socialism. I'm not addressing your pop quiz. I'm talking. You wait and listen.
I will wait. So, Sarah, can you run it back?
You wait and listen. No, we don't do that here. You wait and listen. So, again, here, you're arguing the same shit over and over and over again, and these things have been addressed. And now you're actually admitting. So from going from America is a planned economy and majorly socialist, as was said, now we're going to policies that happen in majorly capitalist nations. They're actually capitalist. And now you're over here saying that since it's a mixed economy, it doesn't matter that it's majorly capitalist. We have to argue some pure laissez-faire argument of capitalism as well. You're pigeonholing us to laissez-faire capitalism, where we're pigeonholing you to the actual definition of socialism, something you admit is indefensible. We gave you actual socialist nations: Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, China, until its markets started shifting more into into more free markets in the 80s. You could argue that they kind of teeter back and forth. It's more closer to fascism maybe now than pure communism, but they're, tomato. So at the end of the day, you don't have great arguments. I'm glad you figured that out, that if you use the real definition of the word and don't just hijack capitalist economy's redistribution, then you're right. I like what you said earlier. You don't want a planned economy because a planned economy sucks. You still want capitalism. You just want redistribution and you want co-ops. We can do both of those things under capitalism already, and the economy can still last for longer than 40 years without collapsing under its own weight. America, besides I think 2 other nations in the world, has the longest running form of government that has not been overthrown by a revolution or another party coming in to take it over, or another nation or whatever coming in to take it over. We're I think the 3rd in the world longest system that's been capitalist damn near the entire time since we abolished slavery, whereas communist systems, they collapse in 30, 20, 10 years sometimes. They can't even keep themselves sustained, and they blame capitalists. You don't let us use your trade routes. You sanctioned us for rigging an election? How dare you? That's all a sanction is you can't use our fucking trade routes or our banks anymore. As soon as socialists don't have capitalists to leech off of, their system collapses every single fucking time.
I gave you my definitions. In my opening. I'm sorry you guys didn't listen. I mean, that kind of sucks because I told you what I was going to argue from the very beginning. I told you exactly what my system is. I told you exactly what my definitions are. And you have ignored that. So you guys talk about your openings. I don't give a fuck what your openings were, because obviously you don't give a fuck what mine was. I told you what I was going to argue.
Bro.
And I'm sorry, you were talking about central planning. That's what you were talking about, and that's what I gave you definitions for.
Yeah,
so that's why we're at where we're at.
Argument.
Stop talking. Stop talking. This isn't your turn.
You finish, Mojo. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We do live in a mixed market economy. Every country on the planet has a mixed market economy. I suggest that we move from that mixed market economy to a more socialist economy, and eventually to an entirely socialist economy. I think we do that by first providing housing and food to everybody. Secondly, providing healthcare to everybody. Third, providing education to everybody. Fourth, providing security to everybody. Fifth, I mean, we could go on and decide what our basic needs are. But once we get all of our basic needs met, then you can do whatever the hell you want with your time. I don't really care one way or another. You can go work on your telos at that point, because this is all about self-actualization. Socialism and economies, and the reason that we exist on this planet today is about self-actualization. You don't get to see that in a capitalist system. We don't get to self-actualize because we're too worried about putting food on the table and a roof over our head and clothing on our kids' bodies. I want to live in a better system where we can actually work on becoming what we were designed to be, instead of working for somebody else and making sure that they can have the next Ferrari.
So I want to bring up the Rome thing once again. The reason why I included proto-capitalist is because in the ways that they were capitalist, it like actually leads to our point and actually really deflates Mojo's point. So like their teammates are actually working against each other here, because the ways they are not capitalist, there's actually more socialist in nature, right? So let me just read a couple ways Rome as a proto-capitalist society was. They had a market-oriented economy, right? So they had like basically goods. They had a highly integrated market across the Mediterranean, a robust monetary system, private property ownership that was fiercely defended by Roman law, right? Okay. Banking and finance, they had complex credit network systems for transferring money, and early banking institutions capable of funding massive infrastructure and distant trade ventures. Okay. They had private enterprise, they could own businesses. All right, ways they weren't capital. Well, slavery. Well, you know what's very socialist is having political prisoners be slaves, right? And work for the government. You know, basically you could argue that everybody's a slave under a socialist system because you're all equal and none of y'all have anything of your own, and you're all provided by the government. So arguably everybody in a social system is a pure social system is a slave, but I don't really want to take that argument. We can just move on to a real, more legitimate one. But the elite stigma. Well, this actually goes both ways. In some ways, people like Crassus did things that were like, hey, you pay me, my firemen will come protect your stuff. Or if you don't, then when it burns down, you know, if you want to save anything from the side, I'll burn it and then I'll buy the property dirt cheap. You know, that was kind of capitalist. It was kind of shitty, but hey, this is the government, the senators, these higher power people were doing this. And get what that is. That's kind of fascist or socialist in nature. But so that's the way they were different than a pure capitalist society. How this is a con. This is why they weren't purely capitalist, right? And they hadn't fully evolved. Oh, okay. Let's look at the state dominated the economy. They had a centrally planned economy where they handle stuff. That's also much more socialist in nature, and a reason why they're not full on capitalist. So even the reasons why Rome wasn't fully capitalist are actually because of their socialist or arguably socialist aspect. Now, I wouldn't argue they were socialist in this regard, because in this case, if they really want to argue and say something was proto, maybe they had elements of socialism that proto, however, but then when you get to actual socialism under Marx and its other philosophers, guess what? This is a rejection of proto-capitalist ideas and capitalist ideas overall. And this is why I included things like the antebellum South. This is why I included things like Rome, and Tyler purposely excluded it because it's called covering our bases. And I can give you examples throughout history where these things are what the socialist moniker rejects as a concept. And that's why socialism has to be defined in at least some sort of parameter. Words mean something, and that's what matters here. Under Mojo's definition, anything is socialism, and thus nothing is. Under at least civics, we can have a discussion about what's going on, but then they're arguing with each other, and they're admitting the neg has no case, and so the AF would win.
So yeah, let me jump in because Mojo said about 5 sentences in his opening, and then has just kind of given us incoherent, contradicting statements. So at one point, again, I want to keep bringing this up. I was asking him about a planned economic economy. It was in my introduction. It was in multiple of my questions. It was in an argument that I made, and he was already addressing the planned economy in his argument. Then, so for some reason, he forgot in the middle of a question that we were talking about that specific context. But it makes no sense because right after he said the U.S. was a planned economy, he also said that we're majorly socialist. The United States is currently a socialist economy. And I asked, is that what you said? He said yes. And I said, that's fucking preposterous. And he goes, no, it's true. So now he's going back on one of his answers, and the other answer as well, he just isn't addressing the rest of that question. I think it's a deliberate lie because he knows he's just talking out of his ass and very much fucked up. So, that being said, there's just been contradictions like that all night. Like, the definition that was given to us in his 4-sentence opening was basically government doing things is socialism, but then they tried to pin us into laissez-faire. We had to argue one specific type of capitalism. They can't even defend a single socialist nation. We brought up several actual socialist nations. The only person that's brought one up is civics. He brought up one that existed for 2 years. It didn't even get all its policies implemented before one of the most base leaders ever came and started throwing people out of helicopters. So can you guys give us one example of a successful socialist country?
I'll let you, civics, go. I just going to give my definition of socialism again, since you seem to have missed it in the first place. I only had 4 sentences, right? I mean, you should have remembered it, but socialism is the means of production being owned and controlled by the people as a whole, or in a market socialist system, it's going to be owned and controlled by co-ops instead of corporations in a market style system. That's it.
So
that's socialism.
Yeah. So socialism is just workers owning the means of production. That's capitalism. You can have that under capitalism.
That is not capitalism.
A planned economy is a pivotal part of the socialist economy.
You can have
I think the other problem is we're rejecting your definition with evidence in multiple other definitions.
So why weren't the Nazis socialists again?
Yeah, they definitely fit that metric.
Because they had a market economy.
Socialists don't believe in nationalization. They don't believe in nationalism. That's not what socialists believe.
Wait, hold on. If you have the national, hold on.
Can I address what
they're national, like they nationally own something and they're not nationalists? Like
nationalism is different than patriotism, right? There's a huge difference. Nationalism almost always has some kind of scapegoat.
So the communists were
socialists. The Nazis used the Jews. The Italians used immigrants. It's always been a thing. Nationalism is dangerous. You have to define the difference between nationalism and patriotism. But that's not what I wanted to address. Tyler, I wanted to address you. I wanted to address the fact that we don't have any good examples of socialist countries because they always get fucking overthrown. Every single time. Every single time. I'm about to give you a list of examples of this where they were democratically elected in one form or another and how they were overthrown. Let's start in 1953 with Iran. Prime Minister Milosevic was the first one targeted by the CIA-led coup and MI6, right? Known as Operation Ajax, where he was a democratically elected leader who wanted to nationalize BP, right? Go ahead. ChatGPT, whatever the fuck you want to say to me. You see how I'm just shooting up the hip here?
You're just making it up. He wasn't a socialist.
So, tell me this, since we're speaking of definitions. If I nationalize oil, is that a capitalist thing or a socialist thing?
I'm taking notes, by the way. I don't need ChatGPT for these.
Just a quick answer. Is nationalizing your oil a socialist move or a capitalist move?
Depends on the type of economy you have. I'd say anything done under a capitalist economy is a feature of capitalism. We have nationalized industries under capitalism.
Nationalizing an industry, a socialist move?
I said we have nationalized industries under capitalist economies. Nationalizing something does not make it socialist. He was not a socialist. You said, let me give you some examples of socialists getting elected and being removed, and then you named the first example as somebody who was not a socialist. Okay. It's fucking wild.
Nationalizing industries so that it's owned by the public is socialism. Nationalizing it, right?
So what the Nazis did. That's the Nazis did. So the Nazis are socialists. All right, cool. They're advocating for national socialism.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sarah. They can go ahead. Please finish what I was going to say.
But no, you said earlier that anytime.
No, go ahead, Tyler. Since you're a fucking fortune teller, go ahead and tell me the rest of my.
You did say earlier that anytime.
Go ahead.
Tyler, would you like? Okay, do you want him to try to clarify his position, and that way you have something better to speak to?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know exactly what he's saying here. He's refuting his previous point, saying they did a socialist, what I consider to be a socialist policy, despite what I said earlier about socialist policies under capitalism aren't actually socialist. They're just a step toward socialism. But they were doing a socialist policy. Therefore, by proxy, this guy who wasn't a socialist is actually a socialist, and he was removed from power. It's just a fucking word game.
Who are the private owners of British of the Iranian national.
We can dive into that if you want to. In the parliament being controlled by the USSR, who had been infringing their government for 20 years prior to that. It's called the Red-Green Alliance. I'm very familiar with it if you'd like. But that being said, the prime minister of Iran was not a socialist, and your claim was this is a list of socialists that were removed after being elected.
Civics, go ahead.
1954 in Guatemala, the Arbenz government was democratically elected, who wanted to implement land reforms, right? To give over 500,000 peasants rights to their land. And the United Fruit Company, along with the Dulles brothers and the CIA, was the first time that they had to overthrow a government in Guatemala. And that was a success criteria that they used for the rest of Latin America. You have the Democratic Republic of Congo in 1960, right? Where they were able to overthrow the democratically elected prime minister who sought to unify the country and nationalize the mineral sector or industry and root out any colonial ties that they still had and bring those industries in the control of the people. Ecuador in 1963, under President Monroy, who had taken office in 1961, the year before, or 2 years before, was democratically elected, was overthrown by CIA-backed coup. You want me to keep going? Dominican Republic in 1963. Socialist Juan Bosch was elected president and free elections, was overthrown and deposed by right-wing coup. In 1964, in Brazil. In 1964, in Guyana. In 1964 and 1971 again in Bolivia. In 1973 with Allende. Do you want me to keep going? In 1909 in Nicaragua. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, and because if you keep going all you want, and then I'm going to clarify with all the factually.
This is to immediately address why we don't have good examples of socialist countries that we can't, because they get overthrown, because God forbid that industries that are run and owned by the public sector or the workers themselves become successful. It is an antithetical understanding of capitalism, because when people and the governments own the means of production and is democratically elected, it is a direct threat to the capital owning class, which again, you want to call it pseudo all the fuck you want. At the end of the day, all of your definitions of capitalism require owners not being the workers. It is a small elite group of people that want to. You can keep doing this all the fuck you want, man. It's not going to
land the plane. That's what you keep saying. Land the plane.
I'm not going on. You want me to put on my wrestling voice for you?
No, I want you to stop rambling.
I'm not fucking rambling.
I would like the wrestling voice personally.
The point is, there's a clear difference between socialism and capitalism here, and you can duck your fucking fingers all you want. What you're failing to understand. Rebuke this. I will land my plane here. There is a clear difference between not having examples of socialist countries because they were overthrown, because ideologically you cannot empower countries that are democratically elected leadership that try to make people own the means of their production, or to have industries that are publicly owned, because they can compete at a market level in the markets that you guys want to defend so much against privately owned companies. That is the biggest fucking difference, because as soon as they become successful, it is fucking detrimental to the rest of the fucking capitalist owning class. I land there and address what the fuck I said.
I'm going to. So this guy rambled for about 10 minutes after his point because he didn't want you to think about it too much. What he said was, here's a list of socialist countries that never got to rise to power, and he named a bunch of countries that were not socialist. And his excuse is they tried to do this one socialist policy by nationalizing one single industry, despite the fact that 99% of their market was not nationalized. They were leaving everything else free markets. They wanted to nationalize one industry that they disagreed and said, hey, you know what, maybe oil should be something we should, nationalize, kind of like the fire department, which is perfectly fine under a capitalist nation. He's defining those as socialists. His examples of socialists are capitalist economies yet again, because they try to do one policy that he just now said, look at this one policy. That means they're all socialists. Here's the prime minister of Iran, an outspoken capitalist. He's a socialist now because I said so. Here we go into Guam, where they tried to nationalize just the banana industry, nothing else. They were still market economy on every other fucking factor. But you skip one. You skip Venezuela for some reason. Why? Because the actual socialist nation, Venezuela, did actually overthrow and nationalize their oil industry by bloody force, the way socialists actually do it. When they overthrew They forced out all the owners that actually paid for that infrastructure. Billions and billions of dollars, decades of investment to build up the means to draw that oil from the ground in the first place, building Venezuela's economy. And then when the socialists took it over, it turns out none of them knew how to run it. They ran that shit into the ground. We've had it for 5 months, and we've ramped up oil production almost 500% because they didn't know how to run it. Because all socialists see people as a key and a cog, like you used in your opening statement. A socialist economy would preserve jobs even if they weren't gaining any money. And we would take these people, we just throw them in another industry. They thought everything would work out. That is how socialists do it. They come to you at gunpoint and say, this is the job you're working now. Enjoy it or go to the gulags. Actual socialists, like the USSR, that actually existed. We have practical examples, and the reason you haven't brought a single fucking one of them up, like North Korea, the USSR, and Soviet or Communist China, is because they're all fucking terrible examples that ended in fucking failure. The Soviet Union collapsed under its own fucking weight.
Yeah, I don't care about
Yeah,
what you
I'm
say.
not
Now,
arguing for.
I have a question. Wait, hold on. I have a question.
Okay,
I have a
go ahead,
question.
Mojo.
Hold on. Cuba sells Cuban cigars all over the world. These are world renowned, right? Everybody loves their Cuban cigars. These are sold for a profit through, generally speaking, private individuals that are selling the cigars. Does that mean they're a capitalist nation?
No, you can participate in markets. You can participate in markets. It's just whether the market is planned or not.
It's about private ownership, and I had said nothing about planned economies. They do have a planned economy. We also do have a planned economy because we do have a Federal Reserve. We do have a currency. We do have a currency that is controlled by an outside of government organization. This is not, and they're not for profit as well. So we set up tariffs. We set up taxes. These are all planned. These are all things that are passed through congressional action. All of these things this economy, these economic situations are all planned by our government. So we do have a planned economy to a certain extent too. But I just want to know, I mean, how many individual items does Cuba have to sell in order to be considered a capitalist country?
I just want y'all to remember. I'm going to turn it back over to Tyler because I know he's ready. He's excited. But like I just want to remember, these are the same groups of people that like delayed truck, like to everybody, talk shit about him all over the news because he said he had concepts of a plan. And then he's over here talking about, oh, there's a planned economy because Chuck's notes, they have a currency. This is just the most ludicrous bullshit I've ever. Listen, but once again, this is what's problem with your definition, why we have over and over rejected it wholesale, because words do mean something, right? Like you can't just be like, oh, Chuck's notes has currency, planned economy. That is not like, it just shows the vast like breadth that you have. Like I can't even, it's clear to me that I've forgotten more about economics than anybody ever attempted to teach you.
You've forgotten
like
more
the
about
idea,
everything.
Yeah, because it's crazy that you're going to sit here and tell me, oh, because they have a currency, it's planned economy, bro. That like, yeah,
Who controls the currency? Is that a free market? Yeah, is that a free market? Is that a private industry?
Yes.
Currency?
If the government issues a currency and it's part of the free market,
is that planned? Does the government make the plans for that? Do we
just
have a
because the government
currency?
does some things that affect the economy,
just because we have a currency, it's planned by the government.
Yeah, bro. Okay, this is the problem. You're fighting a ghost. Like we're not libertarians. We believe.
I didn't say you were.
I understand that, but the argument you're making is for libertarians. We believe the government should have some hand in the economy. I'm not saying they should plan it, but they should provide a framework, and that I guess is a plan. But that is not
suggesting that they should plan portions of it. You are fully suggesting that right now. Yes, you are.
Because that doesn't make it socialist.
There
if
you
plan
go.
Portions, it's not a planned economy. Just because you
listen to your partner there,
portions,
Tyler.
Okay.
All
right, sorry. Before
Tyler
we switch to Tyler.
Like that, having portions that are planned doesn't make your overall influence plan. Like if I have a football game and I give them 50 audibles,
how many products does a country have to sell to be capitalist?
Bro, that is not what makes.
See, this is the problem. You guys are calling everything capitalism. Everything.
Yeah,
we're not. We defined it in depth.
For sure. And this debate should have said pseudo-capitalism versus a very strict definition of socialism. But either way, Tyler, the reason why I even granted you other forms of socialism. I haven't brought up the Soviet Union or anything along those lines because I'm not advocating for an authoritative government. I'm advocating for democracy. That is why I'm not using them as examples. It's not that I'm fucking scared to, is that why would I advocate for a system that I'm not fucking trying to defend? I'm not, don't pigeonhole me into saying that the Soviet Union is the fucking only example that we have. That's not the system that I'm advocating for. I'm advocating for democracy. I'm advocating for democracy as our system of government, and I'm advocating for democratizing our economy. There's a huge difference there, right? The Soviet Union wasn't democratic. So why the fuck would I defend it?
Because that's an actual version of socialism. So you're complaining that you're being pinned down to an unfair definition of socialism. All we're doing is pinning you down to a socialist nation, an actual one, because you're taking credit for capitalist achievements by saying they redistributed it a little bit in some way, shape, or form, and the government intervened in the markets. That's not what a planned economy is. It's already been well defined. It's when the government controls production, distribution, and pricing of goods. That is the definition of the word.
You're just addressing what I said.
Well, I'm addressing both of you right now because you're both
address what I said.
I don't hold on. I took notes. So
pick apart my argument for democratizing our economy.
No, I'll make
democratizing our economy.
I don't think your argument has any relevance to debunk my last point on the argument.
So then, who are you arguing against? You're arguing against the straw man that you created before we even got here.
You're creating a straw man.
I'm arguing against. Well, I was arguing against your point that we're unfairly maligning you to a bad definition, something you flat out just
no,
said.
Nobody even made that point.
Allow me to interrupt.
Literally just fucking said that.
Pardon me, gentlemen. We have about 5 more minutes left, so I want you to try to tie it in a bow and wrap it up before we get to closing statements.
I don't know what else there is to say on this. Unfortunately, this is like embarrassing. We're going back and forth. This dude said that he didn't say the United States was a planned economy. He thought I was talking just about general planning at all, and then turned around again and said the United States is a planned economy just like 2 minutes ago. He's gone back and forth.
I did. I explained to you why. I explained to you where it's planned, and you agreed with me. He agreed with me.
Stop yelling over me. I'm pointing out the fact that you're extremely inconsistent and dishonest here right now. So again, he went from it's not a planned economy and it's bad to it's a planned economy and it's still bad. It's not a planned economy. You got that wrong, and I was wrong. I just misunderstood what you meant by central planning, and then it's back to it is a planned economy and it's good. But then also said at one point in this debate that Canadian healthcare isn't actually a socialist policy. It's just a step towards socialism because it's a mostly capitalist function. And then admitted the United States was majorly capitalist several times in the debate. You are just speaking out of both sides of your mouth because you don't actually have a coherent argument. And I think we've exposed this pretty well during this debate. That's all I got. I'm ready to go to closing.
I think you fucked the shit out of that straw man you just created.
Oh, all right. What a good time to get to closing statements, gentlemen. And if you are wanting to come on and join our open panel Q&A session, I'm going to be dropping the link in the chat here very shortly. So have your clickers ready to click and jump backstage. Civics, if you'd like to begin with your closing statement, please.
All right. There was a lot. There's a lot to talk about here, but I'm going to go back to tie it together with my opening statement. The reason why I believe that we need to democratize our economy is pretty simple. Democracy should not stop at the ballot box. It should continue into our economy. Most people spend the majority of their lives inside economic institutions that they do not control. Working in a company where the majority of the decisions are made by the owners and the shareholders does not benefit the working class and the people that work there. They're the ones that create that capital. They're the ones that are the laborers. They should have a say in it. That is the system that I'm advocating for. They pay rent to landlords we cannot vote them out. We depend on banks, utilities, insurance companies, employers that all have enormous amount of power in their lives. But that's not real freedom. Real freedom is the freedom to not have to worry about your basic needs being met. And when those basic needs are in the hands of private institutions and very few wealthy elites, it is not in the best interest of everybody. I'm trying to change the system that is in the best interest of everybody. Capitalism tells us that we are free because we can buy things, but in a democratic socialist system, we ask the deeper question: do people have power over the systems that shape their lives? The only way that you can have that is if you democratize the economy. A democratic economy means that healthcare is treated as a human right, not as a profit center. It means that utilities, education, infrastructure, housing, and core finance serve the public good. It means that workers have a voice in the firms that they build. It means that co-ops, unions, public banks, public ownerships give ordinary people power that is currently only reserved for the shareholders and the wealthy elite. This is not about abolishing every aspect of our market or nationalizing every small business. Markets can still exist. They will always exist. Small businesses can exist. Innovation can exist. But the commanding heights of the economy should be accountable to the people and for the people, not controlled by private capital interests. When capital controls investment, capital controls the future. It decides what gets built. It decides what gets abandoned, whose communities gets developed, whose jobs disappear, and whose needs are ignored because they're not profitable. Democratizing the economy means that by saying that the future should be decided by boardrooms, not by people. Democratizing the economy means saying that the future should not be decided in boardrooms, but rather by the people whose main obligation is to maximizing returns. Those returns are shared by the people altogether. Capitalism may be good at accumulating wealth, but it is not good at distributing that wealth. It is not the same as human freedom. A society should be judged whether people can live with dignity, security, healthcare, housing, education, meaningful work, and democratic power. That's why I support economic democracy, because working people do not just deserve a vote every few years. They deserve power that is in the workplace, that is democratically chosen and elected, power over public goods, and power over the investments that shape our communities. Democratizing the economy is not less freedom, it's more freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Civics. Mojo, to you, please.
I just want to go over what capitalism is, or what my idea of capitalism is, and I think I can defend it pretty well. Capitalism being the mixture of one person's capital with the theft of somebody else's labor in order to create a profit. This is wage slavery, wage theft. I don't care what you want to call it at that point. But if a person is making a product that's worth $100 and they're getting paid $10 to make it, and the person that's paying them $10 is keeping the other $90, then they are having $90 stolen from them. I'd like to create a system where that doesn't happen. I like to create a system where people get to own their own labor and the outcome of their own labor. All value is created from labor. All value. Value is determined. The value of a product is determined by a market. It always has been, and it always will be, whatever somebody else is willing to pay or trade for it. But that labor itself is where the value is created. So the person in creating the value is the person that should be receiving the value of said labor. I'll just leave it there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mojo. Mr. Gibbs, to you, please.
Yeah, I think that once again, words mean something. I think we've gone over that quite a bit of times now, and not everything means everything, right? And I think one important thing here, and Tyler brought this up almost in his opening, is contract law. Contract law means you are consenting of knowing person to decide something. So, say I own a business. We'll use my business for example, right? So, my leather business, I hire pretty much exclusively Guatemalans. They come up here. I help some of them get their families up there. Help some of them get citizenship the legal way, because it should be the legal way. They get paid higher than what wage they would get normally. And guess what? I provided everything. I provide the structure. I provide the leather. I provide the contacts, all the network. And they get paid above market share for what people, their seamsters should pay. Now, well, according to Mojo, that'd be slavery, even though I provided things that nobody else is providing. I've helped them get their stuff going. They've got all these things. Now, here's the crazy thing. None of that would exist without capitalism. Capitalism has raised more people out of poverty than almost any other system. Proto-capitalism wasn't perfect, and that's why we evolved into capitalism. However, socialism is worse than both. As we gave numerous examples, USSR and their effort when they did planned economies, when they affected the agriculture, millions died of famine. Guess what? We're looking at North Korea, famine. China's had issues with what? Famine. These countries can't even feed themselves. I actually put forth in debate, wanted to talk about Marxism, which would include socialism, communism. I even willingly gave them the communism. They could use every example of communist countries, maybe some successful ones like China. They still chose not to. In fact, to ask socialist countries just to be, because I'm a nice guy. I actually expanded the definition to help them out. But here's the problem. When we look at these things and we look at it from a purely economic standpoint, that means we have to cut out the heartstrings of the democratic safety net. If we like the prompt said, and which is the economic system is better. Well, if we look at purely from an economic sense, communism, socialism, any of these isms that aren't capitalism fail when it comes to comparison based off his empirical fact and data at an economic level. Economics being the drive of value behind production of goods and services and all property value and all these other things, property, all et cetera, right? And then when we compare them, they fail every time. Then when we expand it, if we wanted to, to the governmental inclusion level, which is what it seems like they wanted to do, despite wanting us to narrow it. They still fail over and over again, to the point that they've defined socialism so broadly that I could just put anything in there, like I said, as socialism, like the Nazis, like other examples that would like just be totally not relevant, like, I don't know, military juntas, all these things. But even being good faith and just sticking to the governments that are actually socialist, they fail. And whenever we were prompted at the beginning of our debates, we included things like welfare capitalism being a version of capitalism, along with laissez-faire. We defined it this way. If they wanted to, they should have objected to these and rejected those definitions. However, they weren't able to find any evidence supporting those definitions. That's why I cited Merriam-Webster, Black's Law, and at least one college, while the average debate enjoyer cited another one. And we also both cited Keynesian economic theory as well as others that all define socialism, capitalism differently than what Mojo's doing, while they couldn't provide anybody or any metric to back their definitions of. And I think that's key in this debate going forward. You know what? There's one thing you have to do in a capitalist society, and that's called sales. And one thing, a key factor in sales is assuming the win. I'm going to assume the win and say that was a 3-0 knockout or 5-0 knockout, but I'm mainly a 3-0 knockout because that wasn't even the main event. The main event's to come.
Thank you so much, Gibbs. And Tyler, to you, please. You are muted.
Yep, I got the right one. So, weaponized stupidity. These dudes argue definitions of socialism, changing it to capitalism with just redistribution and taxation. They completely drop the planned economy. They completely drop the equitable distribution of the outcomes. We get into the so it was brought up multiple times that wages are theft. We got into the labor theory of value, the theory that backs that argument that wages are theft. And when this was brought up, I made a point about entertainers and artists that nobody ever addressed. And then we just kept hearing wages are theft. And every time I kept going back to my argument, nobody addressed it, showing that wages are not theft. They just had no rebuttal for it. So they ignored it and just kept repeating their point over and over again. That was the theme of tonight. Ignore the counter arguments and keep repeating your theme over and over again. Now that might work if you're the AF. These guys are the neg. They're not supposed to offer their opinions. They're supposed to hear our opinions and refute them. If you're completely ignoring all of our arguments and just stating your thesis over and over again, you are not winning a debate. You are just stating your thesis over and over again. So, again, the wage theft discussion got brought up over and over, even made it to the closing. But the one time we actually dug into the labor theory of value, that was a fat L. So we said that we're against this, but socialism is about the equitable distribution of wealth. At this closing argument Mojo just gave, he said he wants people to keep their own wealth, but is arguing for a system that taxes you to give equal outcomes. Socialism is about equal outcomes for everybody, regardless of how much effort you put in, regardless of how many skills you have to do your job. Everybody gets the same amount. It's an equitable distribution. This is a core tenet of socialism, meaning if you do something that creates a vast amount of wealth, they take all of it from you and distribute it to the people that didn't create that vast amount of wealth. Under his system, you do not get to keep what you actually made. He's just using a debunked theory to say that and ignoring practical reality. It's just these people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So then we go into distribution of scarce resources. This was the crux of my argument. This was what I brought up in my introduction. This is what I explained multiple times throughout the debate. Not a single counter argument against it. And I will admit this because my partner did a fantastic job. We pre-organized this before the debate. Gibbs, I'm going to make some highly complex economic arguments, and you're going to go in there and bring up Nazis, and you're going to go in there and bring up Rome, and you're going to go in there and distract them, and they're going to argue about the Democratic Party and all this shit. You guys spent half an hour just completely off topic because Gibbs intentionally led you there. That was our strategy to make it so you didn't have as much time to refute our arguments. But you didn't even try. I didn't expect you guys wouldn't even try once to talk about allocation of scarcity under your economic system. This is like, I don't know if you realize, this defeats your entire argument on an economic level, but we didn't even talk economics most. We talked policy. We went back and forth about innovation, and at the end of that, I gave examples, sectors, and I gave industrial revolution points, chip revolution points, show which countries are prospering the most, and I got mad with and then we just moved on. So like every argument, you got counter arguments you could not address, didn't refute them, just moved on, and then repeated your thesis from the beginning as though it was fact. Now, we get into the massive contradiction. We got started out with Mojo saying that generally all socialism is when the government does things to redistribute, and the workers own a lot of stuff. So socialism is when capitalism has co-ops. So under his definition of socialism, it's capitalism. His definition is just capitalism, because you can have 100% co-ops in a capitalist economy with free markets and free enterprise and all the features of specific capitalism, and still have workers owning the means of production, because co-ops are perfectly fine under capitalism. So he's just arguing for capitalism. All their examples were nations that were not socialist. They flat out said, if you make us defend socialist nations, we lose because they're so fucking terrible. It's wild. And then Civics flat out admits the point that he's against a planned economy. That's like another core function of socialism. If you're against a planned economy, you're admitting that free markets are the way to go. So either you want a mixed system that's based off of capitalism, or you want capitalism in general. And if you have a system that's majority capitalism, even if it's mixed, the capitalism that's taking up 70, 80, 90% of the economic makeup is what's sustaining the socialist policies. The socialist policies cannot sustain themselves. We've seen it time after time. These nations collapse under their own weight. There's not a single success story that you guys can name, and all of its excuses about how America is bad, and that's why socialism fails. So easy win. You guys weren't prepped at all. I miss Rinald.
Did you say I miss Rinald?
I do. That was a great debate last time. He's so witty.
I thought I heard that, but okay. Yeah. All right. And again, I've been dropping the link in the chat. I do have quite a few people hanging out backstage ready to come up and join in for Q&A session. We're going to get through the super chats and then we'll bring up the panel. So if you do want to join open panel Q&A, please feel free to hop back there and join everyone else in line. All right, gentlemen, Fourth Wiseman had some fun in the chat tonight, so bear with me. He's got a lot to say. He says, here is for your socialism, but here's your capitalism, and here's your benefit, and here's your taxable liability, here's your profit margin, here's it all combined, rotationally circulated, and here's some food grown and harvested, ready to consume, and here's how it's all supposed to be used, not glutinous consumerism. Here's your investment, call it whatever you like, capitalism, etc., but plant the investment and allow it to grow. And then I think this one came a little bit late. Nope, this one is added on to it. I'd be more inclined to think of it as a majority have no idea how to budget properly, whom lose track of finances, then get complacent, then collapse. Whose fault? Your own. Anybody have any thoughts to what Fourth Wiseman has said so far?
He probably needs a fifth Wiseman to help him out, because
the last one. The last one makes a lot of sense. Like, okay, so I'll use Modi as an example. We all know Modi here. He's like basically lives off his streaming, so he don't make a lot of money. But he's figured out, hey, if I don't make a lot of money, I got to look forward to my future somehow. So what has he done? He started investing. Yeah, there you go. That's Modi. So he started investing. Now he's got money in the S&P. Now he's got money in some other stocks. He's talking about long-term gains, paying dividends. Like this, guess what? He is democratizing his fucking money by fucking spend it in a capitalist system. Like it's everything that they want, but it's actually under capitalism, not under socialism. Like what he's doing is embracing the capitalism in order to look forward to himself. And this is something anybody can do. You spend $7 at a time or $10 at a time, and over time it adds up, But hey, it's those that don't want to actually invest or take time to look into it and work hard that think that we should pay for all their sins. That's who's advocating for this. You're right, wise man.
Anybody else? All right. Caledonian says with a big 10, says Gibbs is wrong. Socialism has existed for decades in the top 5 economies in the world, including the UK, US, and EU. If it fails every time, why is our social and economic systems still largest?
Yeah, those would be considered welfare capitalism situations in those. And just because you have something that could be considered socialist doesn't make it socialist. These are just safety nets that a country as rich as we are, and the Nordic countries and the EU and all of them can do. Also, the EU is able to fucking provide some of these safety nets because they don't have to provide for the military, because the US has been doing it for years. So I guess socialism by proxy of America's goated capitalist power. Even then, still can't work without capitalism. So,
I'm not sure how capitalism works if it requires safety nets.
It doesn't require it, but different versions of it have it. Yeah, it's allowed.
Yeah, because you were going to let somebody die in the streets, if I remember correctly, Gibbs.
Absolutely.
Let her die. It's your own fault. Yeah, that's why we have to have.
Well,
that's why capitalism requires safety nets.
To be fair, if you just change the definition of capitalism,
that makes socialism.
It will make things a lot easier. I just throw the word pseudo. If I just throw the word pseudo in there, it's a catch-all. So you can never be wrong.
If we
pseudo,
right.
To be fair, Gibbs, you've been pseudo right and pseudo wrong all night.
Yeah, I mean, that's not what we did, though, and I know you're confused. I clearly laid out definitions of these things
I'm
for
not
a
confused,
reason.
dude. You said the Roman Empire
it's not
was capitalist.
No, I said they were proto-capitalists. Once again, proto-capitalist.
Sorry, you're proto wrong.
Not
I was proto wrong.
Not
I was
pseudo.
proto wrong.
You're all wrong. You've evolved 100% wrong.
No,
there's no proto wrong.
I'm apologizing. I was
you
proto
do know
wrong.
the
I was
proto
proto wrong.
and
look, he's evolving.
You know what proto means?
I'm sorry.
I don't think he does, because
I was
pseudo and
proto
proto
wrong.
don't mean the same thing.
I was proto wrong.
Means the precursor, right? Like that's what it means. It's not an outright rejection, right?
It would that would be before the Industrial Revolution.
Why are we switching?
So anything that's happened since the Industrial Revolution is no longer proto. Is that correct?
Well, there are proto-capitalist countries during the.
Well, then you're going against the definition, sir.
Hold on,
you're going against the definition.
Hold on, there are governments today that are proto-capitalists that haven't reached full capitalism.
I'd argue they're proto-socialists.
That's okay.
Yeah, everything.
This is what you don't understand.
The entire planet
is a rejection of
proto-socialism right now. The entire planet is proto-socialism.
You do
if it's proto-socialism, that means it's not socialism yet, right?
That means that we're moving towards.
That means it's a different system. It's a different system.
We're moving towards socialism everywhere.
We're constantly
evolving. So if it's proto-socialism, that means it's still the previous system, meaning it's still capitalist right now, right?
Yeah, so you lose again. Like it's just like
we're just going to change definitions. Let's just keep going, man.
No, we're just doing your definitions. That if we use your definitions, you lose. If we use our definitions, we win bigger.
What'd you put in that hookah, man?
Nothing good. I wish I'd had something better. It's just tobacco.
Hold on, my boy.
I talk fast, baby. I know this is your first time in like a high level debate, but
high level.
Guys,
oh my god! Thank you for blessing me with your presence.
Hey, I've won 2 debates.
Being the high level debater.
Yeah, bro. I mean, your argument was I don't have to address a point because I think it's wrong. That's great debate skill, bro. Good way.
I want non-fan up here. What do we have to do? Let's get to these super chats.
Yeah, non-fan's hanging out backstage. He's waiting patiently.
Yeah, I talked about non-fawn, so that's a perfect person.
Yeah, non-fawn. You got called out back there. Hello. James with the Big 10 says halfway there. We can do it. Yes, and actually you only owe 2 more dono goals for full gauntlet mode. Otherwise, we shut down after the Q&A. I want gauntlet mode. I don't know about you, especially with these 4 on screen. Fourth Wiseman throws in another 10, says, and how did all this come about regarding overthrown systems? Interest on a fictional monetary system itself. Any thoughts? You're muted, Tyler.
I was talking to chat. Sorry. Yeah.
I don't understand the question.
It's a statement. Or, well, it's a, yeah. And how did all of this come about regarding overthrown systems? Interest on a fictional monetary system itself.
Is this a libertarian saying money isn't real?
Yeah, that's what I got off of it as well. Can we all agree libertarians are ick?
Yeah.
All right.
The funny thing is, though, I'll say this. Anybody that doesn't support the Trump administration all of a sudden is a libertarian. It's funny.
They're ick. That's what it means. Ick.
Hold on. Trump is like allies with libertarian governments. Like, what's his name in fucking
I promise you, I talk to libertarians every day. They all voted for Trump. And as soon as they started becoming critical of Trump, they donned on their libertarian hat and been like, I've been a libertarian the whole time.
Oh, I know plenty of libertarians that are still pro-Trump. So, I mean, I don't know.
We get a lot of them around these parts. All right. Or at least they may not like him, but they like the policies. All right, coming in over on the coffee app, James in the chat sends a big 50 and says credit towards this goal if you choose to do so. And on that mark, because James sent that over the Buy Me a Coffee, yes, send money on the Buy Me a Coffee, and a new emoji gets its wings. So now you have the new dues emoji in the chat. Enjoy it. Plumpy sent out another Raging Tomato membership. Shout out to the lucky lottery winner over there, the gift that keeps on giving. Fourth Wiseman says with the Big Ten, Gibbs, you shall find the former USSR collapse due to U.S. Middle East invasions. So saying other systems don't work is incorrect, for they do. Russia has legitimate contracts to mine Afghanistan. Gibbs, what say you?
Yeah, I mean, guess what? If their military had been so much more advanced due to fucking their technology advancing under communist USSR or socialist USSR or whatever one you would have put them under, then they would have been able to give these people better weapons to beat us. But instead, what happened is just like what happened in Venezuela. We came in, we Vinny Vici'd, and we whooped their ass. We took all the shit, and guess what? You know why? Because capitalism works and communism can't compete. Yeah. And they have to use capitalist shit to do everything, right? Like, look at their tanks. They copied the American tanks. And then when we finally went up to up to each other, our Bradleys, which are outdated system, are dominating their top tier 5th generation tanks. Like, it's pathetic all around. I think it's clear which system works at every level.
Overthrew everything in Venezuela, right?
Did we win in Afghanistan?
I would say...
The military,
no. I mean, like, if you mean from like a long-term standpoint, probably not. However, from like literally beating the Taliban and winning the war, yeah, the KD ratio is like 1 to 1,000,000, and we were there occupied for 20 years, and then we left, when we chose to leave. That's like not a loss.
Who's in charge right now?
I mean, yeah, I would argue the Taliban has been able to come back in power in the Afghani government.
We went in to overthrow the Taliban, and then we left with them in charge.
So
big win.
Is that your definition of winning a war is completely wiping out every single member of a religious group?
That's crazy. I mean, we're not talking about genocide to win, bro.
Genocide them, it's not a win.
If we're making up definitions,
how very nationalist socialist of you.
You claimed that we overthrew Venezuela, but we left their vice president in charge. So is that overthrowing them or leaving their fucking?
Yeah, she works for us now. She's our bitch. That's overthrowing.
I understand you guys love to remake fucking definitions, but you can't. We did not win in
we didn't remake
it. It's a proto win. Hold on, it's a proto win. I'm telling you, it's a proto win.
I'm sorry. You're absolutely right.
Proto win. No, it's a full on win.
Mm-hmm. All right. James says, sure, elites exploit people under capitalist systems, and then proposed solutions is democratic control. I've seen democratic solutions fuck people over too. So how does democratic control solve things?
If
that government this is probably for me, if that government that you elected fucks people over within a democratic system, you can vote them out. If you didn't have the opportunity to vote them out, you would be fucked either way.
Well, they generally need each other. Like capitalist system, like there's going to be like bad bosses, greedy bosses, people that do certain things. Having a regulatory body there to make sure a worker isn't abused, their contract law isn't violated. Like a fundamental basis of capitalism is that contract law. And I would argue a lot of these policies that we have for like OSHA, which, you know, the worker has to provide, or the owner has to provide PPE and a safe working environment, things like that. I'd argue these are an extension of that idea in the first place. So I think
because capitalism is bad in the first place.
No, capitalism has these features built into it. As you said, a union.
The features are taking advantage of workers.
Forming a union is a capitalist policy, as you said during the debate when I was asking you about unions.
I said it's a move towards socialism.
You said it was a capitalist. I asked though, is it a socialist policy or capitalist policy?
And a capitalist system.
You did say that, but then I asked you, is it a socialist or capitalist policy? And you said because the nation is mostly capitalist, it's still a capitalist policy.
That's not what I said.
It is what you said.
That's not what I said. I said it's moved towards socialism and a capitalist system.
That's not where you ended.
We are Barbie girls living in a Barbie world. I told you that.
Yeah, you changed your mind a lot during the debate, but
I haven't changed my mind on anything. I've been arguing this forever.
Can I ask at what point do I get like the little Malibu car? Like, does that come soon or?
Well, in a capitalist system, you're going to have to suffer and buy it.
Ah, damn.
You're gonna have to
All right,
exploit somebody if
last
you want
one,
that.
and then we got a great panel hanging out backstage, ready to come up and ask you more questions and call you all idiots. Seth, coming in with the Big Ten, says, do Tyler and Gibbs believe that capitalism is the end of economic history, or do they believe that the worldwide economic system will eventually evolve into something else?
Yeah, you want to go first? I can take this.
I got a quick one. When is there going to be to the point where we cannot innovate any further? And if we can't, there's always going to be that space. But once we have automation in place to like be the worker for us, I think we are going to have to transition to a different economic system.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is important, especially in regards to space shuttle. If you remember, I had this kind of a little bit of a teaser for this topic when I was talking with Angry Man about a space exploration. All right, there's definitely going to be different kinds of capitalism develop. I think corporatism is going to develop. We're going to see something where they maybe mine Ceres, and you have like a country like Exxon. Exxon basically is the de facto country mining Ceres, and they're going to have some sort of free market that allows other companies to work in, or it's kind of like almost like a red faction, but it's a corporate thing, like ultra capitalism or something along that, or corporatism. I think we'll have that. I think that'll change again if we ever get faster light travel. Then we're going to go back to more traditional forms of capitalism, as opposed to what I think we'll see with the like sleeper ships and the closest to what we have with like colonization of these companies. I think it's going to be very much more like the East India colonization model, but with modern access, like corporate like interest driving colonization. So yeah, I do think it's going to change dramatically over time, and I think it's going to be very interesting because every time technology changes, political systems change. Like oil is now super important, and whaling has gone the way of the dinosaur. So I think this is kind of interesting to look forward to going forward.
All right. I'm glad you said that, because you were so scared to say that economic systems have changed over time.
That's the whole point of proto. Oh my God! Do you know the difference between pseudo and proto?
I didn't hear you. I didn't hear you.
You know, okay, I've been saying that economic systems change the whole time. That's the whole point of the word proto, is it evolves into something else. And there's a difference between that and pseudo, which is what you kept trying to use. I know that this is why I said proto-capitalist. Then I listed how Rome was not fully capitalist. And those traits align more with a socialist system, which is a rejection of capitalist and proto-capitalist values. Do you understand the difference and why that is relevant to this debate?
So as the economic system changes, are you just going to say that that's just whatever that is? You're going to give it the name proto?
He just ignores your question.
Let me make my point.
He asked you a question. Answer the question.
I haven't even made my fucking point yet.
Okay, that's because he asked you a question.
No economic system is eternal. No economic system is eternal, right? No economic system is eternal. At the time, feudalism looked pretty permanent. Did it not? Right now, capitalism looks pretty permanent, but it's going to evolve. It absolutely is going to evolve. Monarchy looked like the system that was going to be natural until it wasn't. Slavery was defended economically as something to be economically necessary, but it's not, right? Until it was abolished. Capitalism is historical as well. It will evolve. It has a beginning. It had a beginning. It's changed over time, and it will continue to evolve into something more democratic, or it's going to decay. I'm advocating for the democratic side of it, and the democratic evolution of it is to have the fucking labor be owned by the workers that actually produce that fucking labor. That is the entire point.
Capitalism is proto-socialism.
Oh, all right. Well, gentlemen, would you like to meet your panel? They are all waiting patiently backstage to come on and talk to you. I'm super excited. All right, here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me do a little mix up, shuffle up, and give the dog a bone here. I've got everybody moved over everywhere. What happened there? Okay. All right. Welcome, new panelists, to our Q&A portion of the debate, where you get to each one at a time ask your, one or two questions to any of the panelists on the top floor here with me. It will be respectful. It will be a nice general exchange of concepts, whether you have comments or questions, either direction, and we'll go from there. Mr. Balderson, first in line. Let's go ahead and start with you, if you'd like.
I don't know if I'm even ready for that. That's a first. Holy smoke, I'm always last.
Yeah, it's on the 2v2s though. You'll always end up first.
That's because Tyler with his Jew symbol invaded my land and took it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I personally, especially in today's extraordinary tax system, the only meaningful difference that I can see between socialism and capitalism is that the government in our capitalist society takes none of the risk but all the reward. So they aren't there to back up anything. I don't know that I can functionally see a difference at this point in our systems.
Yeah, Tyler, you're muted unless you're.
Were you asking me?
No, that was for everybody. It wasn't for you in specific. I was just giving you shit about being in my spot.
Oh, okay. We're essentially saying that the systems are kind of converging to all be one thing. I disagree with that. I think that we've always had this social contract in place with capitalism's instantiation in the United States of free enterprise, and a lot of these regulations put in place and things like that, worker protections, unemployment protections, things to help the worker, are an extension of that, just legislated because that's what the people wanted. So I wouldn't say necessarily it means they're blending. We still have central economy versus planned economy. We still have equitable distribution versus just maybe some redistribution through taxes, but generally you get to keep a vast majority of what you actually make and produce. So I'd argue the systems are vastly different.
You don't get to keep the vast majority of what you make and produce. That's just factually wrong. Or apparently you don't pay a lot of you don't pay taxes or something. I don't know.
Maybe if you live in California.
When they take away such a giant portion, like, let's remember where the country started, and that was single digit percentages, and the people didn't vote for all these programs. Something that FDR wrote through with his pen, FDR being the president that by far and away had the most executive orders, damn near 4,000 is
I agree. Terrible. He did bad. He didn't lead us out of the Great Depression. World War II did. You're absolutely correct. Like, yeah, and you know what funded that? Capitalism. Rosie the Riveter building products that we needed, our logistics chain. You know what? We could drop a Burger King in any country. We have a military base in 24 hours. You know why? Capitalism, baby. Like, our troops are better fed because why? Capitalism. Our people are bigger than other people. Not just fatter. Yeah, we have a little bit of fat problem. But guess what? We're still bigger militarily. We average about 6 inches on the average person we can't fight. And guess what? Size matters in hand-to-hand combat. Like, whoopings all around. All this is due to capitalism. I agree that we're getting taxed too much, especially if you live in California, where they're trying to turn it into a socialist state. But here in Texas, we're paying way less in taxes than you are. And I feel like I understand where you're coming from, and we can use California as an example. When they go more socialist, it turns bad to the point where it's not even capitalist anymore because they try to plan it and everything fails. Look at the fucking.
Well, it's not even actually socialism either. Is where my problem is. I don't care for socialism, but this isn't socialism, because in socialism, the government owns the means, the people own the means of production. So the whole system gets taken care of. If it starts failing, the same system that is going to repair that. Where in our tax system, I get my money taken no matter what. And if what I'm doing asses out, they don't care because the system is owned by me. So they're just straight stealing from me is all that's going on.
Well, I think first of all, I think
hold on. Sorry. I didn't say this at the beginning. I apologize, non-fun. Everyone else on the bottom is staying muted. It's only just Balderson right now. We're going one at a time. That was on me. I didn't say it. Anyone else on the top have anything else to say to Mr. Balderson?
I mean, again, what I was arguing for is Balderson we live in a democratic society. If you don't like where your taxes are going, then vote for people that are going to advocate for where you do like your taxes to go. I understand that we have a broken system. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to advocate for more of the same of what we have right now, but only within a democratic system can you actually change your leadership. It's not an authoritative leadership. You have the democratic right to change it. And within a democracy, you can advocate for the majority. You can have campaigns that'll tell you we should vote for this person because they're going to change the way that our taxes are being spent. Right? If you have an authoritative system, you want to have that right.
Well, weirdly, we voted for, like our current presidency, the economy was one of his planks that he ran on. He's currently shitting the entire economy down the tubes. And in the last couple of days has been quoted on the TV where he's recorded saying he doesn't give a shit. So, and guess what? Historically, we've always wanted to keep our own money. No matter who we vote for, it goes away. Actually, I would prefer we were in an authoritarian system with a singular or small group of leaders, because then we could get rid of them fuckers. Instead, we got to deal with the dumbasses on the right and the far right and left, which uphold a system that doesn't work for anybody.
Well, I'm not sure how you can blame Donald Trump for this. I mean, we don't live in a central economy, economy,
Trump, I
right?
would blame because of the taking us to war with Iran.
Yeah, this is directly at you guys.
That was like a double for him. He's like, no new wars, and I'm fixing the economy. He's like, yeah, but I like forever wars. I loved being on these panels when everybody was telling me that was only going to last a week or a couple days. Love forever wars. Fuck your economy. That's
to be clear. I hope the war lasts longer. Personally,
guess what? I got something to say to Balderson now. Guess what?
And then we'll move on.
That war started on October 7th when Iran and 6 of its proxies attacked Israel in 2023. It's been going on since. Israel's been fighting it. America.
Oh God!
Yeah, stop fake laughing.
We've all heard the dumb Jew. Can
you spare us the hyena veto?
Yeah, we've all heard it. We know what Israel does. We all do.
No,
everybody knows. You can pretend they don't.
This is just tiny head conspiracy.
Yeah, we know what they do. They win wars. That's not what they do. They win
wars like Chad. They don't hide like weak men that stare at their cell phones. There's Daniel Penny on the world stage.
Did it just come out that they still have most of their missiles and they're raring to go to war? How many times has Trump said we won this war? Fuck, I thought we won it before it began.
And this sounds like a good hold on. This sounds like a good one for the gauntlet. The chat has purchased your gauntlet time. We will get there. So let's put a pin in that one. Hold that thought, and we'll definitely rally that one up for later, Tyler and Balderson. I'm excited for you. All right, let's move it on to Ant. Ant, your question, please.
I'm trying to remember who was saying that socialism had brought people out of poverty. Did I mishear that? No, it hasn't, actually.
You heard that correct. Somebody said that.
Now, there's a little bit of truth, but you're not going to like where this goes. The closest we have to seeing this in action is in 1978, Deng Xiaoping instituted market reforms in China at the suggestion of the West to become more liberal, more capitalistic. And that act basically reduced global poverty by about 75% as they lifted all of these Chinese people out of just the worst state of poverty that's ever existed. And that state of poverty existed because of Maoist policies. Socialism does not lift people out of. So tell me where socialism has lifted anybody out of poverty.
The time in the U.S. that we were most free market would be the late 1800s, right? I think we even have a special name for this. And we saw poverty in this country at around 90%. 90% of our population was in poverty. It took the Great Depression and it took FDR to actually change that and bring us out of poverty. These are socialist programs, whether you like it or not. This is socialism that drug us out of that free market capitalist system that brought us the 90% poverty rate.
I'm going to have to see those numbers, but no, FDR's New Deal slowed down recovery from the Great Depression. It didn't help us out of it. That's a myth.
I didn't say anything about the Great Depression in that.
Yeah, World War II is what got us out.
Yeah, I mean, and also in addition to that,
Depression, I talked about poverty.
the one thing I want to add to that is maybe you could say socialism brought everybody out of poverty by making everybody go into poverty, so the standard of living is so low that poverty line is actually lower than the dog shit. That would be the only explanation, the only way you could say it brought them out, by bringing everybody so far down that poverty level is, lower because the norm is dog shit. That would be the only
right.
Only
So why don't you define poverty here, right? If you're trying to save money in your wallet but you don't have a healthcare education, then we can use Cuba as the example. People aren't hungry; they're well educated. They have access.
But they're literally starving. You know that, right?
We are the reason why they're starving.
Because we won't let them trade with us.
Not just us; they put up a fucking blockade.
Yeah,
they've ruined their trading partner to be able to get oil from Venezuela.
So they're not self-sufficient.
That is
that is
us getting in the way of them. We are the reason why they are starving. Yes, you can do all these fucking monkey faces all you want.
Cuba's got like 14 hours of blackouts daily, bro. Like, this is not a good point. Why can't they provide like electricity?
Why is that?
Because they haven't found a way under their social system to compete with the capitalist system, and it fails. So you're proving my point once again. Even whenever you have a plan, because
if you cut them off from trade, how are they going to be able to survive?
Like they can trade with other socialist countries. The socialist.
No, they can't.
Hold on.
Yes, they can.
Hold on. At one point during the Cold War, arguably the Soviets were winning. Arguably, right? And what happened? Capitalism won out in the end because it's a better system.
What?
The
whole point of a Cold War is that there wasn't a war. Winning what?
The ideological battle over socialism and communism.
Who are the winners and losers of
capitalism
an ideological battle?
What do you think the Cold War was?
The Cold War was a bunch of proxy wars.
It's a bunch of
why is the word cold in front of war in the Cold War?
Because the two nations were at war, but they were battling each other. But they had a bunch of proxies that were fighting in a bunch of other countries. The USSR had spanned out across most of Asia, South America, and other countries in the 1920s and 30s. The America responded 20 years too late. If we had actually stepped up and become imperialists when they did their bloody takeover of Ukraine and other nations around them, we might have had a fighting chance. But we ended up winning it.
Imperialists before then. When did we take over Hawaii?
What does Hawaii have to do with the Cold War?
I'm sorry. Justify Hawaii, and we're not imperialists. I'll wait.
We are imperialists, man. Baby. What is your point?
Copernicus next to you just said that we didn't start imperialism.
No, he said we should have been more imperialist. He said He's saying we should have not given the countries back. That's what he's saying. He's not saying we were never imperialists. He's saying we should have embraced our imperial nature in a more aggressive manner.
World stage, different type. We were doing manifest destiny in the Western Hemisphere. They started going for the whole world. It elevated our imperialists. I never said that they weren't before. You're arguing because I like vanilla. Because I like vanilla, I don't like chocolate. Is your argument right now?
And do you feel like your question was answered?
Yeah,
sir?
You can move on. Thank you. I have other stuff, but it can wait for the panel.
Yeah, fair enough. Uh-oh. Clay just dropped out. I don't know what happened to him.
He said, be right back, Cam. So he's having Cam issues, apparently.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Balderson. I appreciate it. Before I move on to non-fun, I wanted to bring this up. Fourth Wiseman says, I think non-fun is Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman's love child. Just a joke, non-fun, but we love you. I appreciate that so much. All right, Mr. Non-fun, to you, sir. Your question.
Oh boy, I didn't prepare a question. I have a lot of issues with a lot of things everyone said. I guess just to start out here, I think one of the things that Civic said or whatever was that essentially a lot of the good things we have in society now or whatever because of unions or because of the progressive movement. You know, for example, the 8-hour workday and child labor laws and such. I think that broadly these are things that are. Even though unions and the president may have played a role in getting certain legislation passed, you still see broadly declining working hours and declining child labor across countries and across even within the U.S. Prior to these existing and over time. So we've seen a pretty consistent decline in annual hours worked in the U.S., despite the fact that there's only been a few times in which legislation was passed in it. And even prior to the U.S. Passing any child labor laws, there's already a pretty big decrease in child labor. And although I don't think the child labor laws did absolutely nothing, it does seem to be the case that they were not the biggest reason that child labor went down. And further evidence for that is just that if you just look across the world, as income distribution increases, like GDP per capita increases, the amount of child labor goes down, essentially regardless of what your standard for child labor is, and regardless of the legislation that they passed.
I'm sorry. Did you say that wages are increasing around the world?
I mean, so I believe that is the case, but
Are they keeping up
more
with
specifically
inflation?
said GDP per capita is, as that increases, you tend to see child labor rates go down.
Okay, so what has also been decreasing is union membership and unions in general.
I
right?
agree, but that I to be clear,
So
I
when
agree
you're
with that.
so to
That
answer
is
your
part-
own
that is
question is that there's
part
been
of
a
my-
decrease in unions as well. So if these
How-
same,
that doesn't answer my question
these
at all.
same
My claim-
organizations, these same organizations that when we say organize, that means you're having meetings. You have a hierarchy of people that you can call to get things done, to knock on doors. That's what we
Sure, to
mean
be
by
clear,
organizing. And if
I
you're
agree, union membership is declined.
unions
That's
at
part of
their
my part of my
existence-
claim, though, is that there has only been a few times in your history where we have passed laws on certain like labor regulations, right? I don't believe we passed a law relating to like how long the workday is since 1940 or 1920s when that law was passed or whatever. But regardless of that, you still see a continued decline in like annual working hours, right? So I think that is evidence for this is just, and it's a pretty steady trend too, if you look at a graph. So I think that is evidence for
You have that
unions,
graph?
although they might have played a role in getting certain legislation passed. This is just a broader trend we see under capitalism, and you do see it across countries as well. To my understanding, although it's a little bit, there's like probably somewhat of a inverted
I'm gonna challenge you
relationship
on
to it.
that.
I bet.
I don't agree with anything that you just said. Can you bring up those
Okay.
graphs?
Wait, do you agree that we haven't seen annual working hours trend downwards over time in the U.S.?
No.
Okay.
We have
so
more
if I,
people. We have
like,
more people Ubering, door dashing on the weekends outside of their normal working hours. So you have to include that in your calculation.
I believe that is included. I believe that is included.
Okay, so you're making the argument that people aren't working 40 hours a week plus an addition, I don't know, maybe 10 to 15 hours more just to make ends meet.
So I'm saying the median and or average amount of annual working hours in the U.S. has trended downward over time, and that is despite the fact that there have only been a few times where we've sort of mandated these decreases. So that number is going to take into account certain people, like for example, maybe when we get richer, it's not necessarily that like individuals do less work, but it's that people who otherwise would have to work are now supported by transfers from their families, right? So like maybe previously when we were poorer, someone would have to work until they're 80 years old and die. But now, because their child is earning more money, they retire at 65 and then are supported from their family via transfers, right? So like in that case, it's not that individual people are like working less, but median or average working out and annual working hours are still down because like a lot less people are working now, right? You can imagine that being the case.
And states that have less union membership, have they been trying to pass child labor law changes? At least in the state legislation?
I don't see how it's related to my claim. I'm not certain.
It absolutely is. If you have a state that doesn't have a lot of union representation, that means that they have the leeway because there is no organization to fight back. They can try to change the laws to allow for kids to start working in the workforce again.
I don't see how this relates to my how
does it not?
Because
you're saying that there's a downward
claim
trend because of capitalism, and I'm telling you that they're trying to pass legislation to allow children to work in the workplace again. So that completely contradicts what you're saying.
No,
Can you not make that connection?
because my whole claim is that these laws, although I would think that they have probably some effect, right? I don't think their effect is zero. I think generally the broader trend is just related to income distributions shifting to the right.
Examples.
So
I don't understand what's hard to comprehend here.
I don't understand what's hard to comprehend about the fact that average working hours are on a continued decline, despite the fact that it seems like, or despite the fact that union membership has declined, and we've only passed laws a few select times on these issues.
We're trying to pass laws right now that are allowing children to get back into the workforce.
I understand, but how to
So
for example,
downward or upward?
For example, that might be. I mean, I'm not. So if they're trying to pass the laws, I would imagine the trend of actually the amount of children working or whatever, it's flat still, because that implies the laws haven't been passed. But again, I'm not saying these laws do zero, right? So like maybe we repeal the law and we see child labor go up a little bit, right? And to be clear, child labor in this context, or as you're stating it, means 15-year-olds working 8 hours a week or something at McDonald's, right? Not child labor in the context that we think of historically, right? But like, so maybe it would go up a little, right? I'm not saying these laws don't do anything. I do think they prevent some people from working that otherwise probably would be working. I'm just saying there's a more general trend here that doesn't seem to be driven by unions or even legislation necessarily. It seems to be driven, or at least part of the trend seems to be driven by just the fact that, people, there are different mechanisms, but like, the one thing I mentioned earlier, like maybe people will support their family more often so they don't have to work as much when their income tends to increase.
Again, your entire premise that capitalism has led to people working less and legislation that has come that we haven't changed since the 1950s or since the 1940s.
I'm looking at it. I don't have it clean. I thought I could find it on Fred.
Contradicted by the fact that Arkansas was one of the first states to change their child labor laws. So if there's a change in child labor laws, how is that a trend down?
I feel like I've already addressed this a few times, but if we want to, like, I can cite examples to you too. We can look at like the laws that Massachusetts passed in the 1800s with regards to child labor. There's a study that I have from an economist that said, essentially, I forget the exact number, but it did not meaningfully reduce child labor. Instead, most of the decline in child labor had already happened. I can pull up I can have it so I can pull up the exact numbers. I wish I had them memorized or whatever.
Somebody else can answer.
Let me in there because I know the counter argument here. He is correct that wages.
Well, this has hold on to be sorry. This has its effects on school enrollment, but not child labor specifically. But it's saying the child labor laws and compulsory school attendance laws, could explain at most 5% of the increase in high school enrollment. So it's not about child labor specifically, but that's obviously going to be related, right? One of the things that we want to do when we like ban child labor or whatever is typically increase school attendance, right? That's probably.
We've already done that one in the past. I want to point out here that your other argument about hours worked. Yes, we have gone down. I think it's the average is like 34 work hours right now, especially in the bottom economic tiers. That being said, we see a pretty steep, I think a 50% increase in the salary worker, and their wages or their hours worked per week has actually gone up in the last 50 years, a little bit more exponentially in the last 20 to 30. So I would argue that the reason why you're seeing less hourly work from hourly workers is because we're having an increased amount of salary workers filling up that void.
Well, also one other thing to add to that with the salary workers,
I'm looking at for old persons in the U.S. I think.
Right.
We're looking at right now average annual hours worked by persons engaged for United States.
Well, I also want to point out one thing that's key with the salary workers thing is coming back to the contract law as opposed to the wage guy. A wage guy comes in there and he's probably working a guaranteed wage. He might negotiate like, I don't know, $2-3 difference or whatever. However, salary person, they come in there and part of that is negotiations. You negotiated a free. This irrevocably like disproves any kind of theft idea when you're under a salary cap. Because you over here do a salary, you might work 1 million hours, but you've agreed to this of your own volition and what benefits you do or don't get. You've gone through this. There's a negotiation with you and them back and forth, and then you choose to accept or not accept. And usually when you're in a salary position, you have other companies that you can go work for that are competitive wage, wage wise, right? And benefits wise. And we have to include both of those. And this really goes against everything that they were saying about theft. If you are knowingly involving yourself in a negotiation and then agreed upon a contract to take a salary to work an infinity amount of hours with benefits or non-benefits, it just erases the whole wage theft is capitalism argument.
Yeah, we can go back to that if you really want to. But I'm looking at a chart right now, Our World in Data, and there was a huge drop in average hours worked by the year up until 1940. And then 1940, it rose, and then it dropped down again in 1960, and then we've kind of been level ever since then. These are
what is the chart looking at to be clear?
It's annual working hours per worker, starting at 1870 all the way through 2023. It's Our World in Data. Our World in Data, Working More Than Ever is the title of the website or the article. But it's kind of stabilized since 1940. I would say it's basically stabilized and even started going back up again.
It's
possible. I don't know exactly what they're. So I'm guessing there's probably some difference in methodology here. and I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly what it would be.
Well,
but,
this is UK, Belgium, Germany, Sweden, Australia, France, United States. That includes all those countries. They're all about the same graph line. So I don't know.
Oh, hold on. I think I see what you're. I would have to look at it because I'm just looking at Fred, which is the. I'm looking at the average annual.
Well, I wanted to go back as far as I could.
And then I have a book with graphs in it. I have the digital book. I can't like easily send the pictures from it. I wish I could, but it's looking at average weekly hours and average and the hours per employee, and both of those are on a pretty consistent downward trend. So I wonder if this is...
I would say since World War II, we've kind of just leveled out. So I would say, I mean, it seems like the labor that was added during that time period allowed us to stay where we're at, and probably the labor unions too. I don't know that some of these countries are going up now, though. Maybe that is a lower participation in labor unions, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm looking at your same graph here. One of the suggested graphs is literally hours worked by full-time and part-time employees is on an upward trend from the 1950s.
Yeah, but it's not. But you understand how that could be described. For example, what I said earlier, which is that you probably, for example, you would expect kind of as the returns to work increase, potentially then a number of hours worked by individual employees would go up, right? But maybe there are other.
This is full-time and part-time employees, both of them.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, for example, remember when I mentioned earlier that like the sort of, you can imagine the returns to work increasing. Everyone gets paid for their work. They can buy more things with it, right? They can consume more with it. So people might have some incentive to individually work more. But just overall, if you include the non-workers, there might be people who previously would have had to work, but now don't have to because they can be supported by either transfers from the family or even transfers from the government.
Now you're making a lot of assumptions. Now you're adding a lot of assumptions to back up the crap that you're saying.
What do you mean I'm adding a lot of assumptions? I don't think it.
We can imagine. I'm sorry. When you say we can imagine,
I'm explaining why what you're saying is not really contradicting what I'm saying.
And what's not being included in your argument here is, are people satisfied with their work?
I feel like that's wholly irrelevant to like what I've said, but that's not.
There's a massive trend for people being dissatisfied with their working conditions.
Wait, hold on. Wait, also to be clear, are you just looking at the hours worked by full and part-time employees graph?
Yeah.
This isn't even adjusted for a population. Obviously, that's going to increase. It's not adjusted for a population.
Sorry, this is literally from your
and it says hours worked by full-time and part-time employees. It's not adjusted for population. Yeah, it's just going to go up over time.
It's not per capita.
Per capita.
Sure.
Let's go ahead and pin that one, and that way, if you guys want to kind of take some time to look a little more into the study, and be able to have a bit more of a conversation during the gauntlet.
Hold on, just to be clear, I just want to you see on the left side where it says millions of hours, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you understand there's no way that any individual person is working 259,000 million hours.
Yeah, I get that. So what is yours?
Typically, when I look at my graph, right, it just says hours, right? Because it's average annually hours worked by person. So it's just the y-axis here is just in hours, and right now it's at 1,788, right? So a person could obviously work 1,700 hours in a year.
What was the big change at the beginning of this graph that you had already mentioned?
I just want to, but
I don't know what happened at the beginning of this graph.
At what graph?
The lady has spoken.
Yeah, let's go ahead and move forward. Sure. Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate it. Alley Cat, to you, sir, your question or comment?
Okay, but mine's pretty simple. What makes you think that a democratic system works better than a free market?
Sorry?
What makes you think a democratic system works better than a free market?
One is a government system and one is an economic system.
You said that we should be pushing for companies to have a democratic distribution of labor and jobs and stuff like that.
You're talking about like co-ops.
Are you guys talking like
I
democratic
think you're talking
socialism?
about Mojo. You're talking about Mojo, not civics.
No, it's not Mojo.
No,
it's civics.
it's
Because
civics.
I didn't use the
It's
term
civics.
democratic ever. So, but civics, he's talking.
You're talking about democratizing our economy. Is that what your question is,
That's
Alicat?
exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay, cool. You know that we could have a free market as long as people own the means of their production, right?
No, we can't.
What does that mean? No, it don't. No, no. Well, wait.
Why?
You can trade. Why not?
The
Yeah,
people
exactly.
already own the means of production. What are you
No, they
talking
don't.
about? Yes, they
No, they
do.
don't.
The labor. The
In
labor.
the United States, does the state own the means of production?
No.
Then who does?
Not the laborers.
capital
Not the
owning
people that are
class.
actually working.
Okay, are they people?
They're not working,
God.
and they don't
Oh my,
own the means
oh
of
my
production.
God! The people own the means of production.
I'm sorry.
No,
yo,
not
this-
the
you
people.
didn't bring
Only
your
a few
best.
people.
No. Okay. So if somebody is working like a franchise, like a Subway franchise, are they at the top or are they at the bottom? Are they a worker or are they an owner?
They're a franchisee. What do you mean?
Oh my God. If you have, okay, so what the question is getting at is that there's like no distinction between worker and capitalist or whatever.
There absolutely is. What are you
There is
talking
not.
about?
No, there isn't.
There absolutely is.
No, not at all.
How is there no distinction?
Because everybody is responsible for contributing to their economy in the way they see fit.
How?
By doing things to promote the economy.
Do you not need to survive?
Sure. And you do
Is
that
is
by
that
trading
not a-
with
is
other
that not a
people in the
condition?
economy.
Is that not a condition of your survival? That
What?
you need to eat, you need to be able to pay
Sure.
rent. You need
Yep,
to,
yep.
So then you have to work, right?
Free system, though, right?
Well, no.
Do you have a control
You
over
don't
that?
have to work. You
How
can
do you not?
actually you can go out and feed yourself, right?
That's why I just asked you that you need all of these things to survive.
Okay.
So
So,
you need to work.
okay.
How else
so,
are you going to survive?
So does the capitalist class not work? Give me a definition. You have the workers. What's the other side?
The workers. What are you talking about?
The people own the means of production. I said that that's what happens. You're saying no, they
the
don't.
workers own the means of production.
Okay. So what's the opposite of a worker?
You have an elite capitalist class that owns the capital. They're the ones that
Okay.
own the means of production.
What
So in
is
your
capital?
subway example, it would be the franchisee or the owner of that franchise, and then their owners would be all of Subway.
Okay, wait. So the owner of the franchise is an elite capitalist class, and the people that own the franchise, i.e., own Subway, are also
The same
that.
person in your argument.
No, it's not. There is a
Say that
company
again.
called Subway Incorporated, right?
Yes.
Do they franchise businesses?
Yes.
And they have leadership, correct?
Yes.
Do they have capital?
Yes.
Okay. The franchise owner, the single owner that owns the franchise,
Mm-hmm.
is he an elite capitalist?
Yeah.
Okay. And yet he works for other elite capitalists, correct?
Yeah.
So
you can have people that own capital that also answer to other people that own capital.
great. Everyone owns capital. Do you
No,
understand
they
that?
don't. The people
Do you
under
have a
them
car?
aren't-
Do you have a
What
car?
people- that's
Do you
not
have
how
a
that
house?
works.
Do you
That's
have
not-
clothes?
that's
Do you
not how
have,
that-
yes,
okay,
that's
you keep
all
going.
capital. Do you understand what capital is?
Do you understand what capital
I
is?
totally understand what capital is because I have a master's in economics. Do you understand what capital is?
Do you know? I don't give a fuck if you have a master's in economics.
Well,
you wouldn't have
because you're
asked
saying
that
really
stupid
stupid
fucking
things.
question if you had a master's.
No. I'm trying to figure out if you understand what capital is. All capital
Listen,
is
you
are
have a master's
things.
degree and you're free markets for the win?
Yes. Anybody that's come out this way should know this well.
Where did you get your master's degree? DeVry?
Yeah, DeVry. No, it was a community. It was a small college in Naperville.
Okay. So again, the franchisee owner is part of the capitalist owning class. The people that work for him do not own a piece of Subway.
What?
The people that work under the franchisee do not own a piece of Subway.
So if the franchisee was to give shares of his franchise to the workers,
which is what a lot of companies do. A lot of companies do that, by the way.
So does that change your metric at all?
He can't give shares. Oh,
yes, he can.
Yeah, you can. If you own a franchise,
sorry. Let me correct things. Let me correct my question. So you're saying a franchisee of Subway wants to distribute shares of his ownership of that Subway chain?
Correct.
Not the franchise, but of the Subway chain.
To the workers. Hold on. Equally to the workers.
What?
Equally to the workers.
What do you mean equally?
Hypothetically, there's 100 shares.
Mm-hmm. 5 workers.
You would distribute that to the workers.
So every worker gets a 20% share.
Sure.
That's what's required for you to have socialism? What if the owner has 80% and the other 4 workers have 5% each?
Then they're just getting shares. Do they have a one worker, one vote?
But they don't own the means of production. They don't own capital.
Is it 1 worker, 1 vote?
What does that matter? That was the original question.
Democratization. That's where the democratization comes in.
That was my original question.
Mr. Masters, that was an awful question then. Do the workers, by having shares, now all of a sudden have an equal say in what that franchise does? You said there's 5 workers, that includes the owner, so there's 5 votes in what they want to do. Yes, that would be the workers owning the means of production, because there are 5 fucking workers there, and they have 5 votes to make the decision of what that franchise is going to do. Maybe they want to have barbecue turkey sandwiches every Tuesday on sale. They collectively made that decision.
Okay, so in order to have full collectivization, every person has to have equal share in all the decisions that are used to run the company.
1 worker, 1 vote. Yes.
What does that mean? What are they voting on? No. You're not being specific at all. They could be voting.
I don't know how to make it more specific.
It's simple. Okay. Have you
let
ever?
Let me throw it back to you. What do you think I mean by 1 worker, 1 vote?
I have no idea.
Easy.
I have no idea.
You've never heard of the term 1 worker, 1 vote.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm going to explain it this way. There are companies out there that have shares.
Master's degree, man.
Dude, you have no clue what the fuck you're talking about, dude.
How do you not know what 1 worker, 1 vote means?
Because you haven't even explained how the voting system works. So how can I know what that means?
Let's leave the Subway example. They want a new Pepsi machine. Right?
Mm-hmm.
In order to make that decision, they're going to have a company meeting. They're going to be like, listen, we're getting shafted by Coke. Let's get Pepsi.
Okay.
Let's get Pepsi. They vote as a group to decide to switch over to Pepsi.
So that 1 vote off the entirety of the operation of that company makes it a collective.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that would
because they're making company decisions.
That would be for every vote, though. Every decision that the company makes would be done.
What?
By
No.
No. Let me finish answering. So instead of a board of directors and instead of a CEO that are making decisions for the company, you would have all the employees, or the board of directors and the CEO would be equal in the decision-making process with every other worker that works at the company. So every decision-making process is done on through a democratic vote.
Okay.
I think that's what he said.
Okay, that's fine.
Am I right, Civics?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you guys understand how a corporation works? Right?
Yeah, I understand.
What kind of stupid question is that?
Hold on. Before you continue, Alley Cat, does every corporation operate the same way?
No. Okay, but I'm going to use a very generic version.
Keep going. Okay. I just wanted you to make that distinction.
That's fine. They all have shares, correct?
Not every corporation.
Not
okay, I guess
not every worker at the corporation has shares.
No, that's not what I asked. That's not what I asked. I asked if every corporation has shares, and I believe the answer to that is true. Because if you don't have shares, you're not a corporation. You're a different type of.
An LLC is a corporation that does not have shares.
They do. It's just usually the owner. Usually the owner has 100% stake in the share.
Wait, is there a way you can split an LLC up into 10 different owners?
For sure. Most definitely. All the time. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the whole thing. So the idea is that everyone that owns a share in the company gets a vote. Basically, it's the one share, one vote concept that you're trying to get at with the one worker, one vote. But what happens is that generally is they're used once a year to pick the board of directors, right?
One share, one vote?
Yes. So if you have 1 million shares and you have 10 shares.
Can one person have more than one share?
For sure.
Then that doesn't. Then that's not.
I'm not asking how your system works. I'm trying to give a comparative system.
But it's not comparable.
It is comparable.
If it's one share, one vote, but somebody can have multiple shares, that means they have multiple votes. So that's not comparable.
Okay.
This is where I have a problem with this. They do not issue stocks or shares. They are frequently called units or percentages. So LLCs do not have stocks or shares. That's what
units or percentages is the same thing as shares.
But, that's fine. But
fundamentally the same thing.
I'm just telling you that's what was tripping me up.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to explain a system that has worked for 2,000 years and try to compare it to your system. So can we get through the explanation of how a corporation works?
What has been around for 2,000 years?
A corporation.
And I remember, what was the first question I asked you, Alley Cat?
What my name was?
No. When you started going down this diatribe. Is every corporation the same? Do they operate the same?
No, it's not the same. But
okay, so then you can't bring up a 2,000-year-old example if they don't
I'm not
all
bringing up a
operate
2,000
the same way.
Okay, I will sit there and argue that 80 to 90% of the companies operate in the way that I'm going to describe it. Is that fair enough? Today companies.
Today
400 years, by the way. Corporations started 400 years ago.
No, it didn't. There were
the first recognized business corporation was the Dutch East India Company. I'm sorry.
Look at Roman society. They had corporations to deal with public works. I can send you whole papers on this if you really need to see it.
Is it proto-capitalism?
They had they're proto corporations, early legal entities. They're not corporations.
Sure. Okay.
What the fuck, man? I'm sorry, but if we're going to be specific about terminology here, and you want to talk about
the Dutch East Indies,
you have to be fucking specific.
The Dutch East Indies Company wasn't the same as today's companies, so now that doesn't count either. Even though
you're giving an example that doesn't exist,
though.
Yeah, it's a proto, but they don't understand the difference between proto and pseudo.
I know, that's exactly what it is.
Let's
all right, yeah, we can move on. This is
cool,
too stupid for words.
It was a good attempt to get a rundown here, but I quite frankly, I feel like Subway this week on my show has been getting a lot of hits. Okay, a lot of hits, and I like my.
They deserve it.
And you guys are hitting them left, right, and center all week. Clay, my love. My darling, sorry I had to put you on the end of the line. If you'd like to ask your question or comment, please.
Sure, and thank you for having us up. Thank you for having the debate. You guys did a good job. Not quite as good as last night, I would say. Last night's was freaking awesome, but you guys did a really good job. Maybe politics has become the new religion. You guys are fighting like you're religious. But with this argument tonight, these arguments, the debate tonight, kind of what I'm taking away from it is that both sides. What is that breathing?
Yes, somebody's really hard.
I got you, Allie. I got you.
Thank you. Okay, what I'm taking away from this debate is essentially that both sides really just want a portion of the other one's little utopia. So let's go to the communists. Let's go to the socialists.
We're not.
How do you guys, socialist, communist, whatever? It's that side of the crazy leftists. The crazy lefties. How do you feel about private property?
I don't believe in it.
You don't believe in private property. So if you have an apple, I can just take it?
No, that's personal property.
So that's private property, right? So if you have something that belongs to you, it's private property.
There's a difference between private and personal property.
So, no, there's no difference. There's really no difference. There's literally legally no difference, sir. If you have a hat and I want a little piece of that hat, I can take my scissors and cut a piece of it off. so that I can put something on my head, so that I
No.
can protect my head while I'm out
Why
there
would
working.
I advocate for a system?
Well,
Why
I need
would
to
I
work,
advocate for
sir.
a
I
system?
need to work, sir, and I need a portion of your hat.
Can I
Okay.
ask what civics two different definitions are for private and personal? And maybe Clay,
Okay,
you can
cool.
find some common ground with it.
My personal property is my house. You can't just come and take it, right? But I don't own the land. Let's say I have a house by a lake. That lake is shared by the community. Everybody has access to that lake. You want to go fish in it? Cool. Those aren't my fish. That's not my private property. My house that is on that lake is my personal property. There's the difference.
Okay, so that's personal property. So what's private property?
I want to live in a system where there is no private property. Private property would be if a company came in, put up a fence around that lake and said, you guys can't come in here. We need this lake because we farm these fish and sell that. And that's part of our corporation. That's part of our business. We are going to privately own this lake. When in reality, I want a system where that lake is publicly owned. Everybody has access to that lake.
So what if I build a pond on my personal property? Would you want a piece of that too?
You want to build a pond?
Yeah, I can build a pond on my property. Yeah.
Do any
And I
of the
I
resources?
literally put fish in it myself. I went and got the fish and I did a little hatchery. I put fish in a pond that I built myself. Now you want a piece of that. So you have no
Again, I
concept
said
of
the house,
personal or
the
private
house that is
property.
on the lake.
No, there's no difference.
The house that is on the
Full of
lake
shit.
is your personal property. The
Okay, you don't-
lake
you
is
don't know. How about
private,
Mojo?
is public property.
Yeah, you don't.
Right? Do you see how I haven't said any
I
curse
get that
words
you don't
towards
understand.
you?
Yeah, I get it. I get it. You're kind of an
and-
idiot.
And that you're
Whatever. Okay,
fucking
now I want to hear
losing your
Mojo's
mind right
first.
now, and that you have to go into ad
Yeah,
homs
yeah.
because you
You're gonna
can't
do a
compete.
diatribe. I get it. You're
you
an
can't
idiot. Okay,
understand
can I
what
hear
I'm trying to say to
Mojo?
you because I
Can I hear
completely
Mojo?
picked apart like I've never heard.
I
this
want to hear
fucking argument.
Mojo. It's not to you anymore. I heard
Do you
you.
consider yourself a libertarian?
No, I'm a man.
No.
I'm a grown ass man living on the land.
Libertarian.
No, I'm a
It's
man.
nothing to do whether you're a man or a woman. It's not
I don't
gender.
fall into your little paradigm.
Libertarian is not gender. What is wrong
Clay
with you?
doesn't like to claim categories.
Yeah, these little ideals, these ideaisms that you have in your mind, you've been tricked by the system. I haven't. So Mojo, what is your version
so you
of
are
private
you are
property?
the person that everybody hates. I got you.
No, everybody loves me actually.
I like you, Clay.
Yeah, everybody loves me. So Mojo, but in
Clay's
all
great.
sincerity, in all sincerity, I do want to know how you view private property.
Well, I'm going to say you can't own land or natural resources.
Okay, but you can have private property.
Your house is your property. Your toothbrush is your property. Your bed is your property.
You're not an insane person. Okay, very good. Thank you.
How is that different than what I said, Clay?
Because private property is a legal explanation for what we own, and the legality of it matters in this. And you want a system with at least some type of personal owning, which is private property in the legal sense.
No, everything that
want
Mojo said is exactly what I believe as well. I don't think that you should be able to own land and resources.
He did say the same thing. He didn't say it in the same. He did say
but you
that
want
you
a
can't
house
own the
that's
lake.
that's on a land. You want a house that's on a land. So you don't want the land. You don't want to be able to own the land. So I can build a tunnel underneath your house and build a bunker down there and then just kind of live up underneath you.
Do you understand that there might be laws that you can't do that?
Yeah, that's called private property laws. Yes, exactly.
I'm going to say the land under the house is also public property.
Yeah, you want
You don't get to dig into the land underneath my house or anywhere else unless you have a public approval to do so.
Yeah.
So, but you do have a concept of private property, which is, in a sense, capitalism. It really actually boils down to capitalism. You know what capital is? It's owning things, stuff. What actually
with your
Alex was
Apple-
trying to point out. Now, you want a
Right.
piece of it? That's okay. It's great. I think you should have a piece of it, but you should also have, and I'm going to go over to the other side, and I apologize. I'm going to leave it right there because I want to get through this so we can get to the gauntlet. I'm going to go over to the extreme authoritarians. You guys, oh my goodness, Gibbs, you're killing me, bro.
How are we authoritarian? Like, how is like not having government? Actually, we're the opposite of authoritarian. We're saying we don't want central planning by the government. That's the opposite of authoritarian.
I get it. I know your takes on that portion. That's why I'm not even going to go to that. So I don't want to work for you. You don't want to work for me. So we don't want to work for each other. But would you like to work with me to build a better society, to do trade?
Yeah,
Are you asking
economically profitable to pop up? Sure, but if it's
yeah.
not profitable, then no.
So if it's not economically profitable for you, but I'm not going to do it unless it's economically profitable for me.
Right.
We
And there are ways that
call
can be profitable for both of us.
social agreement, social contract.
Yeah,
and yes, I understand that it's not entirely communism, but it is socialism.
It's not communism at all. You understand that contracts are fundamental. Consent is part of this is a big reason why I brought up proto-capitalism versus actual capitalism, and I explained why it doesn't get better. And I know that people like haha proto, it means something. Words means things, right?
Yes.
And so when I bring up contract law, right?
Yes.
Contract law is consent. This is why we don't have slaves under a capitalist society.
both have
We
to
can't,
sit
right?
down.
Like, that's like it's a goal is to have everybody in capitalism is going to have their own economic independence, where they have their own private, not personal property, private property, and consent, and they can enter into a contract with you. That is of two people.
Yes.
Now, if the government forces me to enter a contract with you, that would be socialism or fascism or some other strong-handed, not governmental style of ruling.
But aren't we
Which is
doing
not
that
what we're
already?
advocating.
Aren't we doing that already?
Aren't we doing that already?
Who is holding the gun, sir? As the great Ben Shapiro says, who is holding the gun?
Me.
We both are.
Yeah.
We both are.
No.
The government is holding the gun. We're holding the gun. And we have been
the
since
government's holding the gun.
1776. We've been holding it against each other. And that, my friend, is socialism. We come to the
No, it's
table
not.
because we're
But
both
that is
holding
not what
guns. We're
No,
both
socialism-
holding guns. We've been doing it since 1776. And I'm just pointing this out because
That
you
is
want a
that's
little
not
piece of what they
socialism.
got.
Hold on, that's not
They've got
socialism. Once again,
they've got a social contract that we sit down and we agree and agree and agree, and we all point guns at each other until
Right.
we agree. This
Right.
is just the way it works.
Right.
I'm sorry that
Right.
you don't like it, but it's the way it works. You can
It's-
work with me.
Clay,
or
is
you
the way
can
it
work
works
for
because
me.
you're confused though. Socialism
That's
is not a
retarded.
social contract. Yeah, that was, I gotta be honest, that is like maybe a second grader's understanding of political theory.
Okay.
Like that is like, first of all, a social contract
It's
like with John
absolutely
Locke.
elementary. It's
Hold on,
elementary, my dear
Hold
Watson.
on,
Socialism.
let him respond,
Hold
Clay.
on,
Let him
hold on.
respond,
John
Clay.
Locke, when he advocated for a social contract, right? Like where you have like life, liberty, the pursuit of like property, right? You know, that's going to be something under John Locke's social contract. That's not socialism. And this is why we kept talking about the definition. No, it's not.
Sorry,
No.
you're right. I'm just laughing.
It's a piece
Yeah,
of
it's it's just
you
like
still need a piece of social contract. You still
So-
want your private
social-
property, but you need somebody to guard it.
hold on.
pay somebody.
You got this,
Hold on,
Gibbs.
hold on. Yeah, bro, this is once again the libertarian everything is socialist argument. This is not a good argument. Like, listen, a social contract is not socialism, right? This is why we define socialism as a certain form of economic and political theory where a government plans a central economy.
It's not full-blown
me and Tyler,
capitalism.
if me and Tyler enter into a contract to make widgets, right, and it benefits us both financially, that is separate from the government. The government has nothing to do with this. The only thing it enforces is the laws, which guess what is not socialism. Just because you enforce laws, that would mean every government in history was socialist, which is the most retarded thing I've ever heard in my life. No. Every government, because every government has a law, and therefore, hold on. Every government has law. Oh, no. Every government has had laws, including
Hobbes
the
would
Pirates
actually
of the
disagree
Bahamas.
with you on
Listen,
that.
hold on.
Hobbes would
Listen,
disagree with you on that.
you-
Every
Hobbes would
government
not.
is a Leviathan.
Yeah, but Calvin's got my back, so
But if it's a Leviathan, it has laws.
Right.
So the laws aren't
So then
socialism.
we opt in to a social contract, a social agreement. But here's the
hold on. You are conflating government as a whole with socialism. Listen, government is a social contract between people and the government. Socialism is a form of economic theory and government. They are totally separate things. Do you understand that?
Government in it, right? Government comes into play in socialism. Yes.
You
it
think
does,
every
yes.
government is socialist? Is that what you're saying?
No, there are dictatorships.
What
You've got
government
two
is
choices? Remember,
dictatorships can be socialist or non-socialist. Holy Christ!
You've got two choices.
Gibbs, can you tag me
You
in
can
real
either
quick?
work with
go
me,
ahead, Papa,
or you
please.
can work
So,
for
Clay,
Yeah, absolutely. But this is the part I love.
Turn the
is
panel
when-
all against
is
you is
when
what you've done
that's
right
what I
now.
was gonna say. right? Like it's very rare, but when it happens, the entire upper half can turn on one person on the bottom and it gets good. Go ahead, Civics tag.
So again, Clay, here's where you're just fundamentally wrong. The classic social contract theorists, Rousseau, Hobbes, Rousseau, they wanted to fundamentally protect private property rights. Socialists don't believe in private property. So how the fuck
what makes you an idiot.
are social contract
That's what makes you an idiot,
socialists?
because you don't understand private property. You don't understand the shirt that's on your
Sure,
back.
you
is how
understand
get
private
to
property.
Do, the
Do you
work.
understand the difference
The shirt
between
on your
personal
back
property and
protects
socialist?
you from the sun, the beating sun. That is a piece of equipment for you. The hat on your head protects your head from the beating sun. That is a piece of protection for you. It is equipment. It is for your work. If it wasn't for the work that you do, you could just run around naked. But
do you understand that socialism? Do you understand
a worker,
that?
You're just a worker. I get it. You're a worker. You're pissed off at the fucking ruling class. You're just pissed off.
I think
and
you're
guess
pissed off
what?
that you're
You
outclassed
still
here.
need
I
clothes.
think that's what you're pissed off at.
That's the private. I'm pissed off.
You're the
because
one
you're
sitting
an
up here trying to say that
You are
social
really dumb.
contract
Anyway,
theorists were
all right, I'm going to leave it
socialists
alone.
because the
Gauntlet
word
time.
social is in it. That's your whole argument, and you can't
It's like saying the
distinguish
homeless
between
means
personal
homeless.
property and private property. So then you have that smug smile on your face because
Oh
you're
my
like, I know I'm right in my
But
brain. It works.
Hold on. Before we go,
Social media?
where in the
Socialist.
legality of it is the personal property part?
Where in the what?
Where in the legal framework, the U.S. Code, the statutes of your state, the ordinances, the policies,
Do you know
procedures,
the
and protocols
social
of the police
contract theorists
departments,
lived
the fire
well
departments,
before the
in the
U.S. was a
city,
thing.
where in any of that is it talking about personal property and not private property, sir?
You can't distinguish between personal and private property. That's
No,
a you thing.
You do.
That's a you thing.
Do. That's the problem.
That's a
Because
you
you
thing.
don't have a legal
You are
framework for your
conflating
personal
private property. Again,
what legal
socialism is
framework is
trying
there
to
for personal
dismantle
property?
private property.
What legal
Communists
framework
and
is there for
socialists and
personal
leftists
property?
don't want private property.
What legal framework is there for personal property? Where is it in the statute?
What
It
legal
doesn't
framework
exist.
is there for personal property?
Yes, it doesn't exist. Exactly.
We're talking about a system that doesn't exist
Stick
yet.
on your face. It doesn't exist.
We're trying to build this system.
It doesn't
So if I'm
exist.
trying to build that system just to satisfy you,
doesn't
Clay,
exist. It never has,
Article
it never
1,
will.
Section
It's
1,
called
that's
private
where it's
property.
located.
It's always
Because it
been
doesn't fucking exist.
private property.
Article
Never
1,
been called
Section
personal
1.
property.
The difference between personal
you
and private
suck.
property. There you
Okay.
go.
Yeah, you
All right.
There's where it exists.
Let's
Where in the legal framework,
let's move on. Tyler
Fucking moron.
and
Sorry.
Balderson, I believe, wanted a one-on-one, correct? Was that what I was understanding? Okay, we're gonna put you guys into a speed date, but first, I just want to
Speed
say
date.
I'm shutting down on the Raging Tomatoes side on YouTube. I'm shutting down on Twitter. I'm shutting down on X. I'm shutting down on Kick. If you would like to continue, we are moving over to the Gauntlet. That is at the Gauntlet Debate on YouTube. Start moving over there now to continue the evening. Congratulations to the chat. You have purchased your Gauntlet time and then some. All right. Fourth Wiseman comes in with a Big 10. 100% U.S. is imperialist. This is very obvious in the weights and scales measurements. Get with this system. U.S. metric system supersedes imperial system by far. Man, shots fired at the ruler, man.
I know, right?
Any thoughts to add to this, gentlemen?
No, just a
Quickly?
big thank you
Imperialism
to
is
the thank you to the two capitalists, and thank you, Sarah, and everybody. Keep subscribing.
Yes, keep doing it. Also, 2 cash apps coming in from Mr. Tom Carpenter. I choose to give you a $50 raise. Yes, my hourly wages have increased thanks to Mr. Tom Carpenter, and I am officially an elite capitalist now. Mr. Tom Carpenter sends in a big 50 on the cash app, says, I didn't know you were an elite capitalist before now. Thank you. Thank you for pointing out how elite I am. I've never had elite status, and now I do. And Fourth Wiseman says, my social contract is here. Have a carrot. Have a carrot. All right, if you are watching over on Raging Tomato, I'm pulling that plug now. Get over to the Gauntlet. We are